Chapter 640. Teacher, we came from all over the country. This triennial opportunity is very important to us. It's not completely dark yet. Why don't you let us register for the assessment before we leave? Guan Shilin was dressed in a black robe. His muscles were firm, and his robe was bulging. Due to running outside and being exposed to the sun, his skin had turned into a dark bronze color. He gave off a strong and tough feeling. Seeing that a student who came to register for the assessment dared to block his way, the teacher's face immediately darkened. He coldly glanced at him and impatiently shouted, "Get lost." The pressure of a martial great master gushed out as he shouted. His voice was like thunder as it forced Guan Shilin to retreat a few meters. The blood qi in Guan Shilin's body also surged due to his shout, which contained the pressure of a martial great master. The blood qi in Guan Shilin's body churned in his chest, rushed up to his throat, and seeped out from the corner of his mouth. Seeing this scene, the faces of the other students who were about to step forward changed. They couldn't help but stop in their tracks, and their expressions became somewhat unsightly. Most of them were martial masters. How could they withstand the thunderous roar of a Wuzong instructor? However, this instructor was too much. How could he use his aura to attack people? Furthermore, they were students who came to register for the assessment. With their strength, they could not withstand his roar. The few young men couldn't help but look at the sturdy man in black. He seemed to be about the same age as them, but he surprised them. The teacher's angry roar was aimed at him. Even though they were here, their eardrums still shook when they heard it. The blood in their bodies churned, but the black-robed man was actually able to withstand it. It was really unexpected that he didn't collapse. Guan Shilin raised his hand and wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. He stared at the instructor for a long time before saying, "I heard that Star Cloud Academy is the largest and most famous academy in Qinteng. I didn't expect that the instructors here are of such quality. What a surprise." Hearing these sarcastic words, the instructor's face turned green and red. It was not clear whether it was anger or embarrassment. His face turned red and the veins on his neck appeared. Under his sleeves, his fists were tightly clenched, making cracking sounds. Seeing this, the expressions of the students who were waiting to register for the test changed, and worry appeared in their eyes. Because the sky was already dark, those who had passed the test had already left. Originally, there were 2 teachers here, but the other one had already left. The Spiritual Academy's test had also ended long ago. Now, there were only a few of them and the teacher left. Even the other students from the School of Stars and Clouds were nowhere to be seen. If the teacher really made a move, then... Thinking of this, the few of them looked at each other and wondered if they should look around to see if there were any other teachers from the academy. After all, if the instructor really did make a move, the black-robed man would be crippled even if he didn't die. The instructor glared at Guan Shilin angrily. When he met Guan Shilin's mocking gaze, the anger in his heart seemed to explode. The profound energy in his body surged, and his voice was gloomy and filled with anger. "You want to take the test, right? All right, then I will personally test you. I want to see just how capable you are, to actually dare to disrespect your elders in the School of Stars and Clouds." Chapter 641. Seeing this, Guan Shilin did not retreat. Instead, the dark force aura on his body surged. His entire body sprang forward like a ferocious tiger, waving his fist as he attacked the instructor. After training outside for a long time, he had already trained his body to be iron-blooded and unyielding. This instructor attacked at the slightest disagreement. With the strength of a martial arts grandmaster, even if he could not win, how could he retreat? Bang! The 2 people's fists landed heavily on each other. 2 streams of air and force exploded. Guan Shilin retreated a few meters, and the instructor also took 2 steps back. He raised his head in shock. He was somewhat stunned and also somewhat embarrassed. A student actually dared to attack him and even forced him to take 2 steps back. This was a disgrace. "Brat, see if I don't teach you a lesson today." The instructor shouted angrily and rushed towards Guan Xilin again. As his body moved, a visible dark force aura surged from his body like a whirlpool. The sharp whistling sound was like the turbulent waves in the sea, creating 1,000 waves with one slap. With a fierce roar, it rushed towards the person in front of him. Hiss! Not good. The few people at the side gasped when they saw this. One of them retreated step by step, quickly looked around, and broke into a run. Seeing that the instructor's punch was even stronger than before, Guan Xilin's eyes darkened. This time, he did not face the attack head-on. This time, he raised the dark force in his body and quickly dodged, trying his best to avoid the opponent's attack. However, the opponent was a martial arts grandmaster after all, and he was a martial arts grandmaster. It was difficult for him to fight against him with the strength of a martial arts grandmaster. Especially when the pressure came rushing over, it was like a ferocious tiger biting him. If it was not for the fact that he had gained some strength in the past few months outside, he would not even have the chance to fight against the martial arts grandmaster instructor in front of him. He knew that his strength was limited. If he wanted to hurt his opponent, he had to exchange injury for injury. Thus, when he retreated, he revealed an opening. This opening was very normal in the eyes of others. After all, he was only a martial grand master. What was so strange about revealing an opening in front of a martial ancestor? The Wuzong instructor also saw this flaw. He sneered and swung his fist towards Guan Xilin's chest. But at this moment, Guan Xilin dodged and clenched his fist, gathering his hidden strength, and punched towards the instructor's ribs. The instructor was shocked and wanted to retreat, but it was too late. Bang! Bang! The sound of 2 heavy fists hitting the ground rang out at the same time, accompanied by the sound of bones breaking. The few people were so shocked that their eyes widened in disbelief as they stared blankly at the scene in front of them. After the 2 punches, the instructor's palm that should have hit Guan Xilin's chest only missed his arm. The small bones in his arm should have been fractured under the heavy blow. At this moment, the instructor also retreated quickly and lowered his head in disbelief. He touched his broken ribs with one hand, as if he did not expect that he would be injured by a student. While he was shocked, he was also furious. Monstrous anger surged out of him and his cold and furious eyes suddenly looked towards the black-clothed youth who had retreated a few meters. Exchanging injury for injury. If he was not careful, it would not be as simple as a light injury. This youth was simply reckless and audacious. He even dared to injure an instructor. If he was not beaten to the ground today, how could he stand up in the academy in the future? Chapter 642. Mentor, please calm down. Don't lower yourself to his level. That's right, teacher. You're a great person and don't hold a grudge against him. Mentor, no matter what, you shouldn't have hit him. Please stop. Don't hit him anymore. If you continue, things will get out of hand. Shut up. When the mentor heard their dissuasion, he glared at them and shouted. His voice was as loud as thunder and was filled with pressure. Those people turned pale and didn't dare to speak again. This kid is too arrogant. If I don't teach him a lesson today, I'm not worthy of being a mentor. He shouted angrily and righteously, but he didn't know that his words sounded like a joke to others. Just as he was about to hit him again, he heard a voice. Hurry up, they're fighting. That young man will be beaten to death. Everyone looked over. It turned out that the man who ran away earlier had gone to find a mentor to save the situation. When the instructor saw this scene from afar, he was slightly shocked. He quickly grabbed the man and leaped to the front of the crowd. He looked at the furious instructor who was holding his ribs with one hand and asked in surprise, "What's going on? I heard that you were fighting with the student who signed up for the assessment." When he heard this, he thought that the young man was teasing him. He didn't expect that the two of them were really at each other's throats. A mentor and a student fighting? That made perfect sense. Humph. Seeing that it was a mentor from the academy, the mentor snorted and pointed at Guan Xilin. This kid is too arrogant. He dared to block my way and hurt me when I wasn't paying attention. His behavior is shameful. When they heard this, the young men who were watching from the beginning to the end were stunned. This was too ridiculous, wasn't it? When Guan Xilin heard this, he only twitched the corner of his mouth. In the outside world, he had seen all kinds of people. This mentor had no dignity and was full of nonsense. It wasn't surprising that he would say something like this. No, it's not like that. The young man who went to find the mentor to save the situation quickly said. However, as soon as he opened his mouth, he was glared at fiercely. The gaze was cold and sinister, like a poison. It made his heart stop for a moment and he couldn't speak. Director, don't worry about this. Let me teach this arrogant kid a lesson first. The mentor was determined to not take this lying down. He didn't care that the other mentor was beside him. His aura surged, and his figure flashed as he threw a punch at Guan Xilin. Stop! A thunderous roar came from the sky, and a powerful pressure forced the instructor back, stopping his attack that contained a killing move. Everyone raised their heads in surprise when they heard the thunderous roar and saw an old man flying over from the sky. Vice Headmaster. The instructor's face paled slightly, and only now did panic appear on his face. The elder landed steadily. His sharp gaze swept past the black-clothed young man whose hand was hanging limply. His gaze fell on the pale-faced mentor. When the young man who went to call for help heard the mentor's greeting, he knew that it was the vice director. He quickly said, "Vice Director, this mentor is indiscriminately attacking people." Chapter 643. Thus, before the others could speak, the young man recounted everything that had happened. In the end, he said, "After that, I noticed that the situation wasn't right, so I hurriedly ran to see if there were any instructors in the surroundings. Then, I found this instructor and dragged him over. If this instructor hadn't come to stop me, he would have probably been heavily injured by this instructor. I could tell that this instructor didn't show any mercy at all." When the others saw this, they all chimed in, "Yes, it's like this. That teacher used no less than 50% of his strength in that attack. Fortunately, that punch landed on his arm. If it landed on his chest, he probably wouldn't be able to get out of bed for half a month. Moreover, he can't be blamed for breaking the teacher's ribs. He was just trying to protect himself. Anyone else would have done the same. The only difference was that they didn't have the courage and strength of the black-robed youth." After hearing what had happened, teacher, he looked at Guan Xilin with surprise. Even the Vice Academy head's eyes flashed with a light. His gaze fell on Guan Xilin for a moment before he spoke in a deep voice. "Our Star Cloud Academy enrolls students once every 3 years. Although the enrollment period is only 1 day, even if it's already dark, we shouldn't have rejected the remaining students who registered for the assessment. This is against our philosophy of recruiting elites and nurturing talents." His voice paused, then he said, "How about this? Director, you take over and help these students register for the assessment." "Yes." Teacher, he nodded in response. When the students heard this, they were overjoyed and smiles appeared on their faces. "As for Teacher Wang, this matter is your fault. You'll be punished for a year. Do you have any objections?" The Vice Academy head's gaze fell on Teacher Wang as he punished him. Teacher Wang clenched his teeth, but could only reply, "Yes, I have no objections." The Vice Headmaster nodded and looked at Guan Xilin with a smile. "Since you are able to exchange blows with the headmaster, your strength must have passed the test. There is no need for you to take the test, you can directly enter the Xian courtyard. As for the injury on your arm, I'll let Director take you to treat it later." He felt that his arrangement and punishment was already sufficient. He had directly exempted the black-robed youth from the examination. If he accepted him, he would definitely see a happy expression on his face. Who would have thought that the black-robed youth would emotionlessly glance at him and actually say, with such a despicable and shameless person as a teacher, there's no point in entering the College of Stars and Clouds. Hearing these words, each and every one of them opened their mouths wide in astonishment. No one would have thought that this black-clothed youth would actually give up such a rare opportunity to enter the Academy of Stars and Clouds. Furthermore, from the beginning until now, he had not even opened his mouth to explain himself. Now that he had opened his mouth, he had hit the bullseye and said the words that the other students did not dare to say. He was not qualified to be a role model. You. Tour guide Wang was so angry that his face turned red as he glared at the black-clothed young man. If it wasn't for the Vice Academy head being here, he would definitely teach him a lesson. The Vice Academy head also looked at Guan Xilin in astonishment. He did not think that this young man would actually dare to say such words. Furthermore, as soon as he finished speaking, he turned around and left. He was just about to open his mouth to speak when he saw something thrown to the ground without looking back. "I'll return this to you." A token fell to the ground with a clang. Chapter 644. Who knew that Guan Xilin didn't even have the intention to stop? He pretended that he didn't hear the voice behind him and continued to walk forward. He and Xiao Jiu both had recommendation letters from the black market. With those letters, even if they were from a 9th-ranked country, they could apply to the Star Cloud Academy without having to go through any of the 9th-ranked countries' competition. In addition to the recommendation letter from the black market, Xiao Jiu also gave him the star token. He said that if the recommendation letter didn't work, then he could use the star token. Although he accepted it, he didn't want to use the star token to directly enter the School of Stars and Clouds. This was because he wanted to rely on his own strength. He also wanted to see how strong he was. If he really couldn't get in with his strength, then it wouldn't be too late to use the star token. He just didn't expect that in the School of Stars and Clouds, which was known as the biggest and most famous school in the 9th to 6th ranked countries, there would be such a scumbag instructor. A teacher should pay more attention to his every move. But that instructor didn't distinguish right from wrong and even attacked a student. He had to admit that this trip to the Star Cloud Academy really disappointed him. Wait. Seeing that he didn't stop, the vice director hurriedly chased after him and stopped him. The students at the side didn't recognize the star token, so they didn't know what Guan Xilin threw out. But the two instructors recognized it. When they saw the star token, Instructor Wang's face turned pale and cold sweat faintly seeped out of his forehead. Instructor He's face was full of surprise. He didn't expect this black-clothed youth to have the star token. The vice director stopped him and looked at Guan Xilin. He looked up and down and couldn't see any similarities between him and the red-clothed youth Fengjiu. So he asked, "What's your relationship with Fengjiu?" Hearing this, Guan Xilin looked at the vice director and paused for a moment before saying, "He's my younger brother." His younger brother? The vice director looked at his eyebrows and saw that he had thick eyebrows and big eyes. His face was handsome but not handsome, and his figure was tall and sturdy. He didn't have the slightest resemblance with the red-clothed youth who exuded a noble aura. He asked, "You two don't look alike. Could it be that they have the same father but different mothers?" Director He and the other students behind him were dumbfounded when they heard the vice president start gossiping about other people's family matters. What was going on? What did that have to do with him? When Guan Xilin heard the vice president's words, a strange expression appeared on his face. He looked at the vice president and said, "Her father is my foster father." "Oh. I see." The vice president suddenly realized that this young man didn't resemble Fengjiu at all. So it turned out that they weren't related by blood. No wonder. Looking at the young man, he asked, "What's your name?" Guan Shilin. Ha ha ha, you're actually from the same family as this old man. He raised his head and laughed heartily. Patting his sturdy shoulder, he said, this old man's surname is also Guan. Looks like we're not from the same family. Come, come, let's go to the side and have a good talk. No, there's nothing to talk about. He said coldly and was about to leave. Wait, wait, wait. The vice director stopped him again and sighed, your temper is somewhat similar to Fengjiu's. Aren't you just unhappy that this old man punished Director Wang? Wait. Chapter 645. As soon as these words came out, everyone was shocked and looked at the vice director in astonishment. Instructor Wang, in particular, felt his legs go soft and he fell to the ground. He looked at the vice director with a pale face and opened his mouth, but no words came out. He looked at the black-robed young man with hatred in his heart. If it weren't for him, how could he have fallen to such a state? Being expelled from the School of Stars and Nebula would ruin his future. Cut off his path to success. Why aren't you leaving? The vice director glared at him and shouted again. Instructor Wang gritted his teeth. After taking a deep breath, he stood up from the ground and glared at Guan Shilin fiercely. Then, he turned around and left unwillingly. He would definitely get his revenge. Guan Shilin glanced at the vice headmaster. He did not expect the vice headmaster to dismiss the instructor. After all, every instructor in the College of Stars and Clouds had been carefully selected. They were all outstanding in their own right. Now, the vice headmaster had dismissed the instructor with a single sentence. Seeing this, he narrowed his eyes and didn't say anything. Huh, can we talk now? The vice director looked at him and saw him nodding. He then said to Director He, those students will be assessed by you. As for this one, his gaze fell on Guan Shilin and he smiled. He said to Director He, this old man will deal with him personally. Yes. Teacher, he replied and watched the vice director leave with Guan Shilin. He then retracted his gaze and brought the students to the side to register and assess them. In a courtyard, the old man asked a servant to bandage Guan Shilin's wound. He asked, your brother gave you the star badge. What about him? Is he not coming? He's here. He's here. That's impossible. I couldn't find him in the spiritual academy and there's no registration for him in the Xian Academy. The old man stroked his beard and frowned. Ever since he met that young man, he had been looking forward to him coming to the School of Stars and Nebula. He had a feeling that if that young man entered the School of Stars and Nebula, he would definitely bring glory to the School of Stars and Nebula. Guan Shilin's eyes flickered when he heard this. Xiao Jiu isn't in the Spiritual Academy. He wasn't in the Profound Academy either. Was that in the Pharmacy? Or the Academy of Alchemy? If she said she would come, then she would definitely come. Perhaps, she was already in the Academy. Even though he had his suspicions, he didn't voice them out loud. If she says she'll come, then she'll definitely come. The vice head only needs to investigate to find out. Do you think I didn't investigate? Those two courtyards don't have it, so how am I supposed to check? He sighed, glanced at him, and handed him a registration list. Fill in the information above. From now on, you will be a student of the Profound Academy. If you have any problems in the future, go find the instructor. If it doesn't work, come find this old man. Don't make a move at the slightest provocation. If you make a move against the instructor, you will only suffer. Hearing this, Guan Shilin glanced at him and nodded. He then took the registration form and filled it out with his uninjured hand. Vice head, it's done. Not long after, he handed the form back to him. The old man took it and casually glanced at it. When he saw that Guan Shilin was from a 9th-ranked country, he couldn't help but be stunned. He looked at him strangely. You're from a 9th-ranked country? Yes. Chapter 646. In the end, the vice headmaster looked at him and nodded encouragingly. Cultivate your martial skills well in the academy. Being able to stand out from so many people proves that you're outstanding. As soon as he finished speaking, he added, later, report to the profound courtyard. Just look for Director He and ask him to make arrangements for you. Also, if your younger brother, Fengjiu, comes looking for you, remember to inform this old man. Yes, Guan Shilin replied. Seeing that his wound was bandaged, he bowed and left to report to the profound courtyard. The next morning, Fengjiu had already tidied up. He casually ate something and left to report to the alchemy courtyard. Today was the gathering day for the new students of the alchemy courtyard. She was filled with anticipation. Although she had some understanding of the Tao of alchemy, she had no one to guide her. It was too strenuous for her to fumble around on her own. If she had someone to guide her, perhaps her progress in the Tao of alchemy would be even faster. With a heart full of anticipation, she headed towards the alchemy department. About an hour later, when she arrived at the alchemy department, she saw that there was no one around. She thought that it was because she had arrived early, so she walked around the alchemy department. She looked at the alchemy rooms in the alchemy department and the alchemy furnaces that were placed there. Why is it so messy? Strange, these pill refining rooms look like they haven't been used in a long time. She muttered to herself. After walking around each pill refining room, she finally returned to the front to wait. After another hour, she was still the only one standing in the empty alchemy courtyard. A gust of morning wind blew, causing the fallen leaves on the large trees in the courtyard to fall. It actually felt a bit desolate. After another hour, she found a place to sit down. Her expression became strange. After so long, she was the only one who had come. That wasn't right, was it? Just as she was thinking, she suddenly heard voices. She hurriedly looked in the direction of the voices and saw the two instructors who had tested her yesterday walking in. When the two of them saw the azure-robed youth sitting in the courtyard, they immediately stopped talking. Their expressions were slightly startled, as if they had just thought of something. One of them hurriedly called out, Fengjiu. How long have you been waiting here? This child, why was he waiting here all alone? He was the only one sitting there in a daze in the entire academy. Sigh. They knew that this child was simple and naive. He didn't even know to ask Deacon Sun if he didn't see anyone. It was their fault for not telling him clearly yesterday. Tutor, you're here. When Fengjiu saw the two of them, he quickly stood up and walked over. He smiled and said, Deacon Sun said that today is the gathering day for the new students of the alchemy department, so I came early to wait. However, after waiting for a long time, I didn't see anyone else. Now, it's good that the two mentors are finally here. Hearing this, the two looked at each other and smiled in embarrassment. They didn't come here because they remembered that today was the gathering day for new students, but because they had some matters to attend to. Even so, they couldn't say it out loud. Thus, one of them coughed lightly and said, I see. Alright, today we will tell you some of the basic steps of alchemy. Teacher, don't we need to wait for the others? She asked kindly. No need, no need. The other instructor waved his hand and revealed a kind smile. You're the only student that the pill department has recruited this year. Chapter 647. Yes, the Academy of Elixir is filled with iron. The tutor's expression was serious. He coughed lightly and said, the other academies are 1 in 1,000, but we are 1 in 10,000. It's not easy to enter the Academy of Elixir. As he said that, he patted Fengjiu's shoulder and said expectantly, so, you must work hard. You are the hope of the Academy of Elixir. Ah. Hope. She looked at them in shock and suddenly had a bad feeling. She asked, tutor, how many students do we have in the Academy of Elixir now? As soon as she finished speaking, she saw the two of them look at each other uneasily. Then, they looked at her seriously. Fengjiu, I'll tell you the truth. You are the only student in the Academy of Elixir now. As expected, the corner of her mouth twitched. Ever since she entered the Academy of Elixir's territory, she felt strange. What closed-door cultivation to refine pills? What missions to exchange for contribution points? It was all nonsense. There were no students here at all. Ahem. One of the tutors coughed lightly and said, "It's like this. We used to have many students in the Academy of Elixir in the past. However, we only recruit students once every 3 years, and there are really too few who can be selected. Moreover, almost none of those who were selected to enter the Academy of Elixir lasted. Some only stayed for a year and left. So, gradually, there were no more students in the Academy of Elixir. Yes, but you don't have to worry. There are still alchemists in the Academy of Elixir. Other than the two of us, there are also a few alchemists and a pill grandmaster in the Academy of Elixir. If you work hard, you will definitely have a chance to meet them in the future. Come, this Qianquan bag is for you. Go back and take a look at the things inside. If you encounter something you don't understand, you can use the jade slip inside to send us a message." Thus, they stuffed a Qianquan bag into her hands and explained some simple steps of refining pills to her. Then, they let her go back and study the trial by herself. Fengjiu took the Qianquan bag and went back to her cave abode. Along the way, she felt that her brain was not enough. She had entered the pill department with the intention of learning from a famous teacher and observing more. However, who would have thought that she would be self-taught? As she walked, she found a place to sit down, and looked through the things in the Qianquan bag. She saw that there was a book explaining the basic steps of alchemy, 2 jade slips, and a small bag of spirit herb seeds. She looked at the seed and felt that it would be better to plant some spiritual vegetables than to plant this in the spiritual medicine field. It wouldn't take long for them to be picked and eaten. Thus, she, who had originally planned to return to her cave residence, headed down the mountain. She wanted to go to the small store to see if there were any vegetable seeds and the like. Unexpectedly, when she arrived there, she saw that the wooden house of the small store had been demolished. What's going on? Weren't they still here yesterday? It was demolished today. She was a little dumbfounded. The mountain where the alchemy department was located was so big, and this was the only place where there was such a small store. Now, it had been demolished. What would she do if she wanted to buy something? Deacon's son walked over from nearby and saw the young man standing there in a daze. He opened his mouth and said, "Fengjiu. What are you doing there?" "Deacon's son, here's." Before she could finish speaking, she saw Deacon's son smile. Chapter 648. Hearing this, her first reaction was to ask, "Deacon's son, how long does it take to get to the foot of Qingning Mountain?" Qingning Mountain is the central junction of all the academies. Therefore, it would take at least 4 to 6 hours to get there on foot. However, if you have a flying artifact or a sword, then it would be faster. Hearing this, she sighed, "I understand." Finishing her words, she turned around and walked back. Her flying ship was too luxurious and eye-catching, so naturally she couldn't use it. She did get a few flying artifacts from the black market, but she left them for her father. As for a sword, there was no need to think about it. Without a foundation, one couldn't fly a sword. Seeing Fengjiu turn around and walk back, Deacon's son paused for a moment and shouted, "If you don't have it, as long as you have 5,000 contribution points, you can go to the Academy's heavenly tower to exchange for a flying artifact." Hearing this, Fengjiu, who was walking away, stopped and turned around to look at him with bright eyes. "You said there's a place in the Academy where I can exchange for artifacts. Did he have all kinds of magic tools? Other than artifacts, is there anything else?" "There are countless treasures in the Academy's heavenly tower. There's no need to worry about not being able to find the treasure you want." I'm just worried that you don't have enough contribution points to exchange for it. Deacon Sun smiled and reminded, that place only allows students to exchange for artifacts. Can't buy it with money? Deacon Sun's mouth twitched and looked at Fengjiu. Do you think the Academy of Stars and Clouds will lack money? 5,000 contribution points. I think my jade tablet only has 100 contribution points. Then I have to do missions. She was stunned. She had just entered the academy. She hadn't even opened a pill furnace and had to do missions for contribution points. At this moment, she finally understood why all the students in the alchemy department had left. So this was the reason. Even so, in the end, she still went to the mission area to see if there were any missions that were easy and gave a lot of contribution points. After looking through the mission panel, her gaze finally landed on the missions at the top. The first one was to escort an item. The requirement was to be a great spirit master with 500 contribution points. The second one was to collect fire crystals from the unicorn flame beast in the 10,000 beast mountain range. Each fire crystal was worth 500 contribution points and the duration was 1 month. Her interest was piqued when she saw the second one. The one-horned flame beast was a 7th level spirit beast. Due to its extremely fast speed, it was very difficult to catch it. Furthermore, each one-horned flame beast could only produce 1 fire crystal per year. However, there must be more than one one-horned flame beast in the all-beast mountain range. If there were too many of them, wouldn't it be easy to collect 5,000 contribution points? After making up her mind, she immediately took down the task, registered it in the task board, and returned to the cave to prepare. She didn't intend to bring Old White along. She even called out the cloud-devouring beasts from the space. She intended to let them guard the abode and look for food on their own. After making all the necessary preparations, he gave the 2 beasts a few more instructions before leaving the academy in high spirits. He followed the map and headed toward the 10,000 beast mountain range. Not long after she left, Guan Shilin heard that she was in the Academy of Alchemy, so he came to look for her. After asking around, he found her cave abode. However, he found that the array formation was activated, so he couldn't enter. Instead, he saw Lao Bai and the cloud-swallowing beast around the cave abode. Cloud-swallowing beast, where's Xiaojiu? He knew that the cloud-swallowing beast was able to speak, so he asked. Chapter 649. When he heard this, he was startled. She just entered the academy and was already out on a mission. He knew that the academy required contribution points, but she probably didn't need them, did she? Even if she did, she shouldn't be in such a hurry, right? He paused for a moment, then asked, did she say where she was going? Why does it take a month? She didn't say. It lay there motionless, ignoring him. Seeing this, Guan Shilin didn't ask any more questions. He didn't need to worry about her safety in the academy. He just wanted to talk to her, but now he would have to wait a month. Then I'll be going. When she comes back, tell her that I've been here and that I've entered the Profound Academy. When I have time, I'll come find her. With that, he turned and left. He hadn't paid much attention to her before, but now he realized that she lived in a very remote place. Not only that, but he hadn't seen a single student in the academy since he'd entered. It hadn't been easy for him to find Deacon Sunday compared to the bustling Profound Academy. This place was like a forgotten place. At the same time, Fengjiu was heading towards the 10,000 Beast Mountain range by herself. Just as she was about to cross the mountain, she caught a whiff of the fragrance of meat on the wind, stopping her in her tracks. It smells so good. Her eyes lit up and she gulped. Over the past 2 days, she'd only eaten pastries from the dimension. She hadn't even had a sip of water. Now that she smelled the aroma, she felt herself salivating. She immediately followed the scent. When she followed the scent, she saw a wooden sign hanging outside the courtyard. Written on it were the words, Ovens Restricted Area. Unauthorized persons not to enter. She couldn't help but gulp again. This was the place where the academy's instructors prepared their meals. When she smelled the aroma, her stomach began to rumble. She hadn't felt hungry before, but now she was starving. She poked her head out of the window and reined in her aura. Inside the large kitchen, there were only 2 people bustling about. Apparently, they were the chefs, and everything had to go through their hands. However, outside the kitchen, there were a dozen or so helpers, all of whom were carrying out the dishes they had prepared. When she saw all of the dishes on the kitchen table, she couldn't help but walk around to the back of the ovens. Taking advantage of the fact that no one was looking, she slipped in through the window and hid under the table. She secretly poked her head out and looked around. Seeing that the 2 chefs weren't paying attention to her and the helpers outside couldn't see her, she quietly stretched out her hand and reached for the table. She picked up a roast chicken on the table and stuffed it into her space along with the plate. She moved slightly like a cat and gently lifted the lid of the large stew pot. Seeing the 2 chefs talking, she quickly and quietly took a pot that could hold a pigeon and filled it with soup and meat before hiding it in her space. When she saw that there was less than half of the stew left, she thought for a moment, then scooped some water from the side and poured it into the pot. Yes, let it continue to stew. Although the taste is a bit bland, it's still soup. That newcomer, young Master Mo Chen, is quite picky with his food. At noon, we had 12 dishes delivered to him, and almost all of them were sent back. The dean also told us to be careful. This job isn't easy. Chapter 650. The head chef closed his eyes and took a deep breath, smelling the aroma of the spirit soup in the air. His face was filled with intoxication. The corners of Feng Jiu's mouth twitched when she heard that. She quickly closed the lid of the glass. She had taken many sets of things. She had probably given each mentor the same set. Only a few mentors only had 1 set. For those who only had 1 set, she couldn't take all of it. She only took half of it. Finally, she scooped up a full bowl of spirit rice, then quietly slipped away. Huh? How come there's only 1 of the pig trotters left? How come the dean's stir-fried matsutake with spirit meat is missing by more than half? If I remember correctly, there should be a full plate. Hearing the head chef's words, the other head chef laughed and said, "Did you forget because you were too busy? No one would dare to come in here. Besides, with the 2 of us here, it would be impossible for anyone to steal from the kitchen." Although they were head chefs, they were also foundation establishment cultivators. Who would dare to steal from the kitchen right under their noses? That's true. Maybe I remembered wrong. The head chef laughed, then shook his head and looked at the bowl of soup. When he opened it, he saw that there wasn't even a wisp of smoke coming out of it. He stared in shock, then looked down at the fire, a strange expression on his face. He remembered that the soup had been ready just a moment ago, but it was still warm. How come there wasn't even a bit of steam coming out of it now? Meanwhile, Feng Jiu had left the ovens and was heading in the direction of the All-Beast mountain range. She moved with incredible speed, and in the blink of an eye, she disappeared into the mountains. When she reached a place where there was no one around, she took out the things she had stolen from the kitchen and placed them on the ground. Who would have thought? I never thought that my dimension would come in handy like this one day. She sighed, looking at the dozen or so dishes and the bowl of soup in front of her. She smiled so widely that her eyes couldn't be seen. There's no justice in this, is there? The students don't get to eat, and the instructors don't get to eat ordinary food. They get to eat spirit meat, spirit ginseng, spirit chicken, and so on. If I don't share the burden with you, who will? AI. She shook her head with a smug expression. She rolled up her sleeves and drank the fragrant soup first. As soon as it entered her mouth, the rich fragrance spread on the tip of her tongue along with the aura of spiritual power. After a few mouthfuls of the soup, she felt a wave of spiritual power flowing towards her dantian, nourishing the green lotus in her dantian. Tsk tsk, how fragrant. What kind of Mo Chen wanted to drink? He, the soup is already with me. You can just make do with the water I mixed with it. What she didn't know was that on the tree behind her, a white figure was sitting on top of it, quietly looking at her under the tree. A pair of calm and indifferent eyes were looking at the young man sitting cross-legged under the tree and taking out a dozen or so dishes from his dimension. Some of the dishes were whole, while others were combined into one. When Mo Chen saw the young man drink the soup with satisfaction and say the last sentence, his eyes flashed with a dark light. He watched as the young man rolled up his sleeves and tore off a spirit chicken leg to eat, saying, "I'm starving. I haven't had a good meal since I entered the institute." Mo Chen couldn't help but feel astonished. Chapter 651. AI. I'm already regretting it. There's nothing in the alchemy department. Even the number of people is pitiful. It's fine if there's no one to talk to, but they don't even provide me with food. If father and grandfather knew that I was starving here, wouldn't they be heartbroken? Fengjiu muttered as she chewed on the spiritual chicken leg meat in her hand. She finished it in a few bites and threw the bones behind her. Then, she picked up the pig trotter and started chewing on it. Perhaps it was because she saw the young man eating in big mouthfuls, but that extremely good appetite of his made Mo Chen's stomach growl as she watched from the tree. The sound wasn't loud, but at this moment, it was extremely clear. Especially in Fengjiu's ears, the sound was like thunder. She was so shocked that she instinctively raised her head. What she saw scared her so much that the pig trotter in her hand fell to the ground. She couldn't swallow the meat in her mouth. She choked and coughed violently. Cough 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 cough. She patted her chest and stood up. She originally wanted to scold this person for hiding here and scaring people without anyone noticing. However, when she thought of what she had just said, she suddenly felt guilty. She calmed herself down, suppressed her anger, and grinned. Are you hungry too? Come down and eat with me. Eat with me. I have a lot of food. Mo Chen, who was on the tree, watched as the youth below the tree panicked, then became angry, then guilty. His eyes moved slightly, but he didn't go down. He continued to sit there quietly, watching quietly. Seeing that the other party didn't even bother with her, she smiled embarrassedly and said, "Are you a student of the Alchemy Academy? We've seen you before. Outside the academy, you're also under the trees. It's really ape dung." That's right. Wasn't it just an ape? She had already come here to steal food, but she was still seen by someone. Furthermore, it was this banished immortal whose strength was obviously above hers. She didn't even know when he had arrived. When she thought of how she had taken something out of her space under his nose, she couldn't help but feel guilty. He probably didn't notice that her space was different from other spaces. Time seemed to have stopped. Under the tree, Feng Jiu's face was stiff from laughing, but she didn't see any reaction from the person above. After a long while, just as she was thinking about whether she should go up the tree to take some and directly give it to him, she saw the white-robed immortal on the tree gently jump and land steadily in front of her. Seeing this, her eyes lit up. She hurriedly pulled him to the side of the grass and pressed him to sit down. "You just sit there. I'll ladle some soup for you. I heard from the kitchen staff say it's prepared for some Mo Chen. I just drank a bowl of it." As she spoke, she excitedly scooped a bowl full of soup for him. Then, she attentively brought it to him with both hands. However, when she saw the white-clothed banished immortal sitting on the grass with her head slightly tilted, seeing the 2 oily claw marks on his pure white sleeves, she immediately froze and smiled a bit embarrassedly. "I didn't do it on purpose. I was just too excited." Yes, she was too excited. She had been caught stealing food. No matter what, she had to drag this person in. This way, he would be her accomplice. She didn't believe that after drinking this bowl of soup, he would tell anyone about today's incident. Chapter 652. As soon as she said this, the banished immortal in white looked up at her. I don't mean anything else. I just think that since my claws got dirty, it's only right for me to help you clean it. She smiled embarrassedly and passed the bowl of soup forward. Softly, she said, you should drink some soup first. This soup won't taste good if it gets cold. Mo Chen looked deeply at her, then reached out his slender, white hand to take the bowl of soup and drink it. Seeing this, Fengjiu's anxious heart finally relaxed, and she secretly let out a sigh of relief. She sat down cross-legged beside him, and in a moment of excitement, she pulled off the other side of the spiritual chicken drumstick and handed it to him. Come, eat, there's plenty. Mo Chen looked at the youth's hand holding the drumstick, and did not reach out to take it for a while. In his past experience, he had never eaten like this, directly holding and eating with his hand. He did not know how to describe this feeling. Fengjiu knew what he was thinking at first glance. Seeing him like a banished immortal, she knew that he had never eaten like this before. She smiled and said, eating meat like this in large pieces is even more delicious. It's definitely different from eating with chopsticks. You'll know once you try. Seeing this, Mo Chen hesitated for a while, but still reached out to take it. However, he did not eat it in big bites like Fengjiu, but tore off a small piece and ate slowly. Fengjiu laughed loudly, and took out a pair of chopsticks and placed it in front of him, so that he could eat later. He also tore off a piece of meat and ate it without hesitation. About an hour later, only a mess was left on the grass. Seeing this, Mo Chen felt that it was a little rude. After all, he would not normally make a table like this. Even if this could not be called a table, he still felt that it had lost its elegance. However, when he saw the youth digging a hole and burying all those things, he could not help but feel astonished. There's a small stream in front, let's wash our hands there. After Fengjiu buried the bones, plates and other things in the ground, she clapped her hands and called him over. Then, they walked towards the stream not far away. In the stream, she washed her hands and face. Just as she was about to find a place to lie down and have a good rest, a robe was handed to her. It's clean. The gentle voice was faint, like the flowing water of a mountain, clear and pleasant to the ear. She tilted her head slightly and poked her head out from behind the robe in front of her. She raised her head slightly and looked at the man who was standing in front of her with a robe in his hand. At this moment, he was only wearing an inner robe. His expression was indifferent as he looked down at her. Oh, okay. She responded and took it, washing it in the stream. However, it would have been better if she didn't wash it, but after washing it, Fengjiu's forehead was drenched in cold sweat. He looked at the robe that was getting dirtier as she washed it, and did not dare to turn around. Not far behind her, Mo Chen looked indifferently at Fengjiu's back, then looked at the setting sun. After a long while, he heard the sound of fabric tearing. He returned to his senses and looked at the youth, only to see the youth holding his robe in a daze. He got up and walked over to take a look. His eyelids twitched. Chapter 653. This. She was a bit embarrassed as she looked at him. How about, I'll compensate you in the future. You can't afford it. This is made from heavenly silkworms that spit out silk every 3 years. Hearing this, Fengjiu's mouth twitched. Looking at the man's calm expression, she asked embarrassedly, then what should I do? If it's not bad, it's already broken. You said you're from the alchemy department. He looked at the young man in front of him, his tone calm. Yes, I just came in, so I don't know how to refine pills. She hurriedly said, afraid that he would think she was from the alchemy department and wanted her to refine pills. Mo Chen glanced at Fengjiu. With a wave of his hand, a piece of paper unfolded in his hand. Help me find the 5 types of spiritual herbs listed here. Fengjiu didn't take it, but frowned and said, "If you want spiritual herbs, don't you know how to exchange them? This place is so deep in the mountains and forests, where am I supposed to find spiritual herbs for you? Moreover, I still have things to do myself. No matter how valuable your clothes are, they're still clothes. At most, I'll compensate you with 10 pieces in the future, right? No matter how valuable heavenly silkworm silk is, it can't be more valuable than ice silkworm silk. Once I leave the academy, I'll find a way to get it for you. I need these fresh herbs, but I don't have any exchange points." Hearing this, she glanced at him and was puzzled. Something new. She reached out to take the paper and glanced at the spiritual herbs. When she saw the 5 types of spiritual herbs, her eyes widened and she unhappily said, "These are all spiritual herbs that are 3rd level and above. Does this place have 3rd level spiritual herbs? Even if it does, it won't be easy to find them. This blue spirit snake is a 9th level poisonous snake. Its body is only the size of a chopstick and its speed can be compared to lightning. You want to use its fresh blue scales as medicine? How can you do that? And this pair of rare deer blood, do you know how precious this thing is? Deer blood. You should use some of my blood. If I can find these things, I'll keep them for myself. Why should I give them to you?" She looked at him like he was an idiot. She crumpled the paper into a ball and stuffed it back into his arms. "This young master is too lazy to care about you. You've already drunk the soup and eaten the meat. You can be considered my partner in stealing food. I'm not afraid of you complaining." She gave a snort and swaggered past him. "See you again." A cheerful voice came from afar. Fengjiu didn't care that the sky was already dark. He raised his hand and flew towards the 10,000 Beast Mountain range. Mo Chen's eyes flashed as he watched the youth head towards the Wanshou Mountain range. In fact, he had asked the youth to help him find those herbs because he wanted the youth to collect them for him after he found them. It was similar to being an assistant. However, before he could finish his sentence, the youth's knowledge surprised him. Now that he saw the youth head towards the Wanshou Mountain range like the wind, he remembered that the youth said he had something to do. He should be heading towards the Wanshou Mountain range. If that was the case, he glanced at the robe that had been thrown on the ground and retracted his gaze. He followed behind the youth and headed towards the Wanshou Mountain range. Fengjiu walked under the cover of the night. After walking for a while, she turned back to look. She also used her divine sense to check that the man in white was no longer following her. Only then did she happily hum a little tune. She didn't stop walking. As she moved, her pace was strangely fast. Chapter 654. When the first ray of sunlight shone through the leaves in the morning, Feng Nine, who was sleeping on the tree, was about to turn over lazily. However, when she remembered where she was, she stopped moving, rubbed her eyes, and yawned. The air in the forest is so good. She squinted her eyes and listened to the morning breeze rustling the leaves and the birds chirping in the trees. Her mood relaxed and she felt relaxed. However, at this moment, she saw the person sitting on the tree branch beside her, quietly looking at her. She was so scared that she almost fell to the ground. She held on to the tree branch and patted her chest, angrily staring at him. "Why did you follow me? Can't you make a sound? Don't you know that you can scare people to death?" She didn't expect to see this man when she opened her eyes so early in the morning. However, this person in front of her was not the deity she first met. She only felt that he was a ghost, always appearing beside her without anyone noticing. How many times had it been? "I need your help." Mo Chen said indifferently, his gaze falling on the forest. "There are 5 types of spiritual herbs that I have. Don't joke around. Your strength is above mine, what do you need my help for?" Fengjiu waved her hand. "Out of the 5 types of spiritual herbs, 4 of them have to be obtained from spiritual beasts. You have to deal with them yourself. Don't drag me into it." I don't want to lose my life. Mo Chen looked at her and said, you don't need to catch them. You just need to help me gather them. Hearing this, Fengjiu was slightly startled. She looked at him and asked, you're a student of the Spiritual Academy, right? Why would a student of the Spiritual Academy be looking for those herbs? Or the Medicinal Academy? That's not right. You don't smell of herbs. Which academy are you from? Mo Chen looked at Fengjiu and didn't answer. Instead, he said, you ruined my heavenly silkworm robe. Hearing this, Fengjiu's mouth twitched. She speechlessly turned her head away. Suddenly, she realized that this man in white was really too much of a deity, too much of a deity. Didn't she just ruin his clothes? Was there a need to accuse him like this? Alright, I won't ask anymore, alright? But let's make a deal. You go catch them yourself. I'm only in charge of assisting you. I still have my own things to do. Don't bother me if there's nothing important. She curled her lips as she spoke. With a light leap, she landed steadily on the ground. Looking at her surroundings, she sat down on the ground, took out some herbs and began to fiddle with them. It was too troublesome to look for the unicorn flame beasts in the forest. If they came to her obediently, it would be much easier to get the fire crystals. Seeing the youth sitting on the ground and fiddling with the herbs, he was startled and asked, how much do you need? Half an hour. She replied without raising her head. Follow me to the center of the 10,000 Beast Mountain range in an hour. The herbs he was looking for were all in the center area. They weren't in the periphery. I know. I want to go there too, she said as she quickly processed the herbs. About half an hour later, 2 full bottles of medicinal powder were stored in her sleeves. Only then did she stand up and pat her robe. She said to the person who had been watching from the side, let's go. Mo Chen saw that he had settled the things on hand and listened to his words. He took a step forward. However, just as he took a step forward, the youth pulled on his sleeve. He looked back. The first thing he saw wasn't the youth's face, but the hand that grabbed his sleeve. Chapter 655. Mo Chen glanced at the young man, as if he just remembered something. With a flick of his sleeve, a green bamboo flute with jade tassels floated in front of him. He leaped onto the flute and was about to call the young man up when he saw the young man staring at the green flute with bright eyes. He even reached out to touch the tassels at the end of the flute. This flute is so beautiful. Is it a bamboo flute? Has it been refined? Where did you get this bamboo? This green color is so pleasing to the eye. Fengjiu's eyes fell on the flute and could not move away. The flute grew bigger and bigger, and there was a spiritual aura around it. Even when the man in white stepped on it, he did not step on the body of the flute. The tassels at the end of the flute were swaying gently. It was so beautiful. Mo Chen was about to call him up when he saw the flute shake. The young man had already jumped up and put one hand on his shoulder. Let go. He frowned slightly. He did not like to be touched by others, but he was touched by the young man again and again. Although he did not feel repulsed, he still did not like it. Especially when the young man ruined one of his robes. How do I let go? What if I fall? I can't fly. Fengjiu said as she stared at the flute at her feet. She felt that it would be nice to have something like this to hang around her waist. Mo Chen frowned slightly. He paused and said, hold on to the corner of your clothes. As soon as he finished speaking, he saw the young man holding on tightly to his sleeve. His eyes were still staring at the green bamboo under his feet. Seeing this, he did not say anything else. He controlled the flute with his spiritual power and flew towards the center of the Wanshou mountain range. This was the first time she had flown in such a high altitude on an aircraft. The whistling wind brushed past her face, and it was unlike the airflow of a spaceship. Furthermore, standing on the aircraft made her worried that she might slip and fall from the sky. But it was undeniable that this feeling was really exciting. "What are you looking for here?" Fengjiu, who was thinking about something, suddenly heard the man in white ask her a question. She said, "To collect the fire crystals of the unicorn flame beast to earn contribution points." As soon as she finished speaking, she asked curiously, "What do you want those herbs for? Are you a student of the pharmaceutical department? Or a spiritual academy?" She was very curious about this. The person in front of him didn't say anything, as if he didn't hear anything. He looked ahead calmly until he reached the center of the mountain range. Then, he descended from the sky. Fengjiu jumped to the ground and watched him put away the flute. He couldn't help but turn around his waist. Did he take back the space? Just as she was thinking, she saw him form a seal with one hand and casually lay down a barrier. Seeing this, her eyes narrowed slightly. He was not a student. No matter how outstanding the students of Star Cloud Academy were, it was impossible for them to casually cast a spell and set up a barrier. "This place can protect you. If you encounter any danger, just come in. The spirit beasts and ferocious beasts here can't enter this barrier." After he finished speaking, he tapped the ground with the tip of his foot and disappeared from Fengjiu's sight. "Hey!" Fengjiu shouted, but the man had already disappeared into the depths of the forest in the blink of an eye. "Teacher! Does this academy have such a young instructor?" She muttered to herself, but didn't pay any more attention to him. Instead, she walked out of the barrier to prepare for her trap. Chapter 656. Roar. With a low roar, one of the shadows pounced on Fengjiu. Its sharp claws created a gust of wind in the air. Fengjiu, who had his back facing the shadow, sensed the danger behind him. He instantly dodged to the side and quickly turned around. Then, he laughed softly. "I was still wondering what it was. So it's a rank 9 Earth King beast." She laughed softly and glanced at the 6 Earth King beasts surrounding her. These beasts were shaped like dogs, but they had horns like cows, sharp teeth and claws like wolves, and a layer of black fish scales on their bodies. These beasts were about 1 meter tall. At this moment, they were staring at her covetously and drooling. In the next moment, 2 Earth King beasts pounced on her. They opened their mouths and revealed their sharp teeth as they tried to bite her neck. She immediately took out a dagger from her boot and jumped onto the back of one of the Earth King beasts. She injected dark force into the dagger in her hand and viciously stabbed into the Earth King beast's head, which was its most fatal part. Whoosh! Roar! The sound of the dagger piercing into the head was accompanied by a sharp aura. That Earth King beast let out a low roar. When Fengjiu pulled out the dagger and blood splattered, the Earth King beast fell to the ground with a bang. The thick smell of blood instantly filled the air. Seeing that Earth King beast twitching on the ground and losing its life, the other 5 Earth King beasts' eyes turned red. They howled and pounced on Fengjiu again. Once the 5 rank 9 Earth King beasts released their aura, the aura in the air also solidified. The whistling airflow was as sharp as a knife and was not inferior to a martial arts grandmaster realm cultivator at all. If other students were to be surrounded by 5 or 6 rank 9 Earth King beasts, they would not be able to withstand it. However, Fengjiu relied on her strange movements and speed to circle around in the middle of them. Once she attacked, she would kill them instantly. With her strength, it was not difficult for her to deal with the rank 9 Earth King beasts. However, these level 9 Earth King beasts obviously had spiritual intelligence. After killing the other 4, she leaped onto the back of one of them. She grabbed its horn with one hand and was about to stab it with the other. However, the Earth King beast that suddenly charged over without regard for its life scratched her hand with its horn. The dagger in her hand also fell to the ground. Her body slid down from the beast's back due to the collision. However, at this moment, the Earth King beast suddenly started running. As it ran, it swung its body around, as if it wanted to use the force of the collision to kill her. Not only that, the beast behind it was also chasing after her. For a moment, she couldn't move up or down. She couldn't let go of the horn even if she wanted to. She could only hold on tightly to the horn and try to take out the dagger again. However, the branches that were flying around gave her no chance to stabilize her body. Her body slid slightly to one side and she had to reach out with her other hand to hold on tightly to the horn to prevent herself from being flung away. Damn it! The branches scratched her body and tore her green clothes. She felt a burning pain and her skin started to bleed. The Earth King beast was running at an extremely fast speed. It was as if it was trying to throw her off. After the Earth King beast rushed out of the dense forest, she could faintly hear the sound of torrential water not far away. She looked up and couldn't help but be shocked. Damn it! Stop! In front of her was a torrent of water. The turbid water was so deep that she couldn't see the bottom. If she were to fall in. Chapter 657. Her heart skipped a beat. She could feel her entire body floating in the air. Due to the powerful impact and inertia behind her, she was thrown forward. Even if she wanted to stabilize her body, she couldn't pull it back. At this moment, seeing herself falling headfirst into the torrent, she couldn't even scream. She was calculating in her mind. Once she fell into the water, she could directly enter the space. This way, she could at least save her life. However, just as she was thinking this, she saw a white figure appear in the air. He grabbed her collar and pulled her back to the side. Instantly, she felt her mind become muddled. After a while, she came back to her senses. She saw the person in front of her waving his sleeve. A visible spiritual aura was released from his sleeve. It directly wrapped around the two Earth King beasts that were trying to escape and threw them into the torrent. Ouch! A frightened cry was heard, but it was drowned out in an instant. She looked at the torrent and heard the torrent engulfing the two Earth King beasts. You dare to provoke 9th rank Earth King beasts? Do you want to die? Mo Chen's eyes were filled with anger. If he had not heard the commotion and rushed back, this young man would have died here. Fengjiu touched his nose and said, I didn't provoke them. They came to surround me. I couldn't run into the boundary at that time. She did not expect things to turn out like this. She did not even care about sacred beasts. Who knew that she would almost die in the hands of 9th rank spiritual beasts? It was embarrassing to say it out loud. Mo Chen coldly glanced at the young man. He waved his sleeve and turned to walk back. Seeing this, Fengjiu sighed and could only follow behind him obediently, saying, Thank you for saving me. The person in front of him didn't utter a single word and continued to walk forward. Fengjiu jogged beside him and asked, Didn't you go to catch those beasts? How did you hear the commotion here? Are you a teacher? A teacher of the spiritual academy? Mo Chen did not speak the entire way back to the boundary. However, when he saw the 4 corpses of 9th rank Earth King beasts in front of the boundary, his eyes flashed. He looked at the young man beside him and asked, You killed all of them? She scratched her head and looked around, asking, Is there anyone else here? Mo Chen looked at her deeply. A knife to the heart. The cut was neat and steady. It could be seen that the speed was extremely fast. The control of Xian energy was also very exquisite. Otherwise, it would not be possible to do this. This young man, time and time again, brought him surprises. Go into the boundary and treat your wounds. Don't wander. He watched Fengjiu enter the boundary before he left. Fengjiu simply bandaged the wounds caused by the branches. Seeing him leave, she looked around and walked out of the seal. She dragged the Earth King beasts into the seal and began to peel off the useful parts. After she dealt with the Earth King beasts, the man in white came back. But to her surprise, he caught 2 unicorn flame beasts for her. "It's for you." After saying that, he set up a barrier to trap the 2 one-horned flame beasts before turning around and leaving. Feng Jiu blinked her eyes in astonishment. She looked at the 2 unicorn flaming beasts trapped in the boundary and then at the white figure who turned around and left. For a moment, she didn't know what to say. Chapter 658. The single-horned flaming beasts were of the fire attribute, so they could produce fire crystals every year. However, the fire crystals that fell off were usually swallowed by the beasts themselves as the fire attribute energy in their bodies. What if she could stimulate the fire attribute energy in their bodies and make them produce fire crystals in less than a year? Well, she could try. The herbs that could stimulate the fire attribute were not particularly precious. Just mixing a few ordinary fire attribute herbs together should be able to achieve this effect. Therefore, once the idea came up, she immediately went back to the other bounded domain and started working. About an hour later, pills the size of longans were formed in her hands. They looked like mud and did not have the smell of herbs. On the contrary, they had the smell of meat. "Come, come, eat." She squatted outside the bounded domain and threw out 2 pills. The 2 flaming beasts only glanced at them and then snorted and turned their heads away. However, when they smelled the smell, they could not help but turn back and pick up 1 pill in each mouth, as if they were afraid of eating too slowly. Feng Jiu stared at the reaction of the 2 flaming beasts and saw that nothing happened after they ate the pills. However, after a few breaths, she saw them walking back and forth in the bounded domain irritably. The place on the beasts' heads where the fire crystals were stored gradually surged with a visible airflow. This airflow gathered with spiritual power and slowly condensed into crystals. Seeing the speed at which the crystals were condensing, Feng Jiu could not help but widen her eyes in excitement. Although she increased the dosage of the pills, she did not expect the crystals to condense so quickly. Almost within a few breaths, a fire crystal was condensed on the forehead. After it was formed, the fire attribute energy in the fire crystal surged and then fell off again. After 7 or 8 more crystals were condensed, the fire attribute airflow on the flaming beasts' bodies gradually subsided. Feng Jiu was stunned for a moment, then laughed happily. Looking at the dozens of fire crystals condensed by the 2 flaming beasts, her eyes lit up. She could only see a lot of contribution points waving at her. Therefore, she fed them 2 more crystals and squatted there to collect more fire crystals. When Mo Chen came back, he saw the 2 flaming beasts lying in the enchantment, looking as if they were on the verge of death. Their bodies seemed to have lost a lot of weight, and the fire attribute aura on the flaming crystals was so weak that it was almost invisible. That young man was sitting outside the enchantment with a big smile on his face, counting fire crystals. Looking at the fire crystals in the young man's arms, even he couldn't help but be astonished. There were only 2 fire beasts, at most 2 fire crystals. Why were there so many in front of the young man? Where did he get it? Ah! You're back. Feng Jiu raised his head and looked at him. He saw a small snake with blue scales coiled around his left hand and a motionless Shuang Jin deer in his right hand. Feng Jiu's eyes lit up. You actually caught it so quickly. Hiss. This was a blue-scaled venomous snake. And that Shuang Jin deer, it's said to be extremely fast. You actually caught it. She hurriedly put away the fire crystals and ran over. She was very curious about the snake and deer in his hands. Mo Chen looked at the young man with a strange gaze. He did not ask where he got the fire crystals. With a wave of his sleeve, 2 ropes flew out and tied up the snake and deer. He said, "Don't go near them." With that, he removed the enchantment that trapped the flaming beasts. At the same time, he set up an enchantment between the snake and deer to prevent any accidents. Chapter 659. Mo Chen also looked at the two escaping flame beasts in astonishment. He wasn't astonished that they could still escape, but rather astonished that the two beasts looked at the young man with fear. He looked at the young man and saw that the young man was also staring at him, so he gave some instructions and left. After another 2 hours, Mo Chen once again caught two beasts. When he saw the young man sitting in the barrier and needing pills, he called out, "Come help me when you're done." Feng Jiu raised her eyes to look at him. She quickly kneaded the last bit of medicinal paste into a pill and put it away. After washing her hands, she walked towards him. Seeing that he had brought back 2 ninth-grade spirit beasts this time, she stared at the 2 spirit beasts for a moment and asked, "How do you want me to help?" "Take the herbs I want to use. Take the double treasure deer's blood when I tell you to take it." He didn't even raise his head as he instructed. He turned around and set up a barrier not far away, then took out a cauldron from his space and began to prepare. Seeing the cauldron, Feng Jiu opened her mouth. He was going to refine pills. He was an alchemist. Thinking of this possibility, her heart became excited. She immediately began to scrape off the blue scales on the blue spirit snake's body and took out the fat under the tricolored beast's skin, an alchemist. She hadn't seen an alchemist refining pills when she entered the academy. Now that she finally met one, she had to see how different his alchemy technique was from hers. On the other side, Mo Chen ignited the earth's core fire to open the cauldron. He entered this mountain range for a 6th-rank elemental spirit pill. This pill must be refined by igniting the earth's core fire, and some of the herbs must be fresh. Take the double treasure deer's blood for example. He must take the double treasure deer's blood that was still warm and the congealed pill. Therefore, he came to the 10,000 Beast Mountain range. Feng Jiu followed Yang Kai's instructions and retrieved the usable herbs from the bodies of the beasts, then quickly arrived behind Yang Kai. Seeing that Yang Kai had drawn out the earth core fire, Feng Jiu couldn't help being slightly surprised. Other than their own fire attribute flames, an alchemist could also draw out the earth core fire to refine pills. However, this earth core fire was not a flame from their own body, and the slightest mistake in controlling it would result in a furnace of pills being wasted. As such, very few people would use the earth core fire to refine pills. Since he dared to use it, it was clear that he had full confidence. With such confidence, how could he be an alchemist? Or pill grandmaster? Seeing that he was still burning firewood under the furnace, and that he was even using willow branches as firewood, her eyes moved slightly. She focused on watching the man in white form hand seals while adding medicinal ingredients into the furnace. That skillful technique, that method of alchemy that she had never seen before, was an eye-opener for her. About an hour later, a medicinal fragrance faintly floated out of the furnace. The medicinal fragrance spread and drifted between the forest, attracting a large number of spirit beasts and ferocious beasts. However, those beasts were isolated outside the boundary. They tried to break through but failed. They could only walk back and forth outside the boundary. Get the double treasure deer's blood. Mo Chen's forehead was dripping with sweat. Refining pills had consumed a lot of his spiritual energy. At this time, he was focused on refining the pills in the furnace. He didn't even turn his head as he ordered Feng Jiu. "Oh. Okay." Feng Jiu returned to her senses and quickly arrived in front of the tied double treasure deer. She used a dagger to cut a small hole and took out half a bowl of deer blood and brought it to him. She saw him use his hand to congeal qi, and the deer blood in the bowl was drawn into the furnace, leaving not a single drop behind. Chapter 660. She raised her head in astonishment and looked at the rolling clouds in the sky. She couldn't help but look at the man in white with excitement. He was refining a medicinal pill that was above the 5th rank. For an alchemist, pill recipes were extremely precious. Although she had a lot of pill recipes in her space, most of them were common ones. There were only a few that were above the 5th order. Even here, she couldn't tell what kind of pill he was refining. She originally thought that with the rolling clouds in the sky and him doing the final condensing of the pill lightning would be triggered for the final tempering very soon. However, she didn't expect that after another hour, the thunder still sounded, but the heavenly lightning didn't strike for a long time. She watched from the side with her heart in her mouth. Those spirit herbs that were put into the cauldron were all extremely precious spirit herbs, and from the looks of it, he only prepared one portion. If he failed, she clearly wasn't the one refining the pill, but she was more nervous and worried than the person refining the pill. After another 2 hours, Mofa retracted his hand and took a step back. At the same time, 3 heavenly lightning bolts struck from the sky and landed on the pill furnace. After the 3 rumbling sounds, the surroundings seemed to return to calmness. Only a rich and fragrant medicinal fragrance filled the air. It was done. The pill was done. She looked at him in a daze. She saw him turn his hand and pat the pill furnace. Only one pill flew out from the pill furnace. This is a 6th-rank medicinal pill. She cried out in surprise and looked at the pill veins that were surging with spiritual energy. Then she froze. Spiritual energy. Pill veins. This. How could she forget such an important thing? Spiritual energy. She had spiritual energy in her dantian, but she couldn't condense it. Once spiritual energy entered her body, it would be directly absorbed into her dantian to nourish the green lotus. Without spiritual energy, she couldn't refine pills at all. Heavens! How could she have made such a big mistake? Why did she only remember now that she couldn't refine pills? When she refined the life essence pill, she hadn't eaten the green lotus yet. After that, she only cultivated her mystic energy aura. When she left the Phoenix dynasty, the flying ship she took was also controlled by spirit crystals. Although she knew that her spiritual energy aura had been used to nourish the green lotus in her stomach, she thought that she could at least nourish it until it bloomed, right? Since she couldn't cultivate her spiritual energy and couldn't build her foundation, she could cultivate her mystic energy. It wasn't a big deal. Thus, she didn't apply for the Spiritual Academy or the Profound Academy. Instead, she applied for the Alchemy Academy. But she forgot that refining pills also needed spiritual energy aura. No wonder she felt that something was wrong on the day of the exam, but she couldn't tell what it was. How did she make such a big mistake? If she couldn't condense her spiritual energy, how could she concoct pills? She was the only student in the alchemy department. If they were to find out. Thinking of this, she felt a headache coming on. What she didn't know was that her body wasn't completely devoid of spiritual power. After all, there was spiritual power in her dantian. After cultivating for so long, even if she couldn't condense it, there was still spiritual power in her body. It was precisely because of this that the 2 instructors and even Mo Chen didn't expect her to be unable to condense spiritual power. Chapter 661. What's wrong with you? His heart was moved, but he had already asked the question. Fengjiu took a deep breath and looked at the person in front of her. She sighed and waved her hand. Nothing. No one could help her with this matter. She had better think of a way herself. She walked over and threw the blue spirit snake out of the barrier. As for the double treasure deer, she bandaged its wounds and let it go. These were all spirit beasts that could be used to make medicine. She couldn't kill them, in case she couldn't find them when she needed them in the future. Mo Chen didn't say anything. He just looked at the young man quietly. He saw that the young man had released the spirit beasts and was staring at the spirit beasts outside the barrier. Suddenly, the young man turned around and looked at him. Let's part ways here. Your pill has been refined. I don't plan on going back yet. Let's leave it at that. As she spoke, she tiptoed and lightly jumped out. She jumped onto a tree branch and went deeper into the forest. Seeing the young man leave, he was slightly surprised. However, he didn't chase after him. With his ability to kill a 9th-level Earth King beast, as long as he was careful, there shouldn't be any problems. Moreover, the pill had been refined. He still had to go back and get someone to send the pill back. Thus, he waved his sleeves and removed the barrier. At the same time, he leaped into the air and flew back on his flute. Fengjiu skimmed through the forest, following the tracks of the 2 flame beasts from before. When she found the flame beasts' territory, she set up a formation around it so that the flame beasts couldn't leave. Then, she threw out her pill and began to collect fire crystals. For half a month, other than the unicorn flame beast, she also collected a lot of fire crystals from the surrounding spirit beasts of the fire attribute. Those spirit beasts that were originally full of vigor had all lost a lot of weight after condensing dozens of fire crystals. Every time they saw Fengjiu, they would turn around and run away. One evening, a spirit beast of the holy level had almost been drained of its fire attribute energy. It was lying on the ground on its last breath. "Alright, I'll leave some for you. Have a good rest and eat until you gain some weight. I'll come back later." Fengjiu smiled and patted the holy beast's head. She gave it a chi-gathering pill. Satisfied, she was about to leave when she heard a deafening roar, accompanied by a woman's clear shout. She was slightly startled and looked towards the source of the voice. When she saw Yi Jing, whom she had met once before, in a sorry state, being chased by a holy beast-rank black bear, she couldn't help but be slightly surprised. Yi Jing's aura was slightly chaotic, and her spiritual energy was almost exhausted. She couldn't dodge in time and was hit by the black bear's claw. She staggered and fell to the ground. The situation was critical, so she immediately shouted and flew out. A loud shout traveled outwards. When the black bear heard that voice, its body shrank back, and the paw it was about to slam down froze in midair. It turned its head around to look in the direction of the voice, and when it saw that it was indeed that human, it immediately shriveled up, let out a roar, and crouched down on the ground. Yi Jing was scared stiff. She thought she would be flattened, but she didn't expect that the black bear's paw wouldn't come down after hearing a shout. In that moment of life and death, she was so scared that she broke out in a cold sweat. She quickly stood up from the ground and was about to thank the person who saved her life. Why is it you? Chapter 662. Hee, isn't it me? She laughed awkwardly. Seeing that Yi Jing was guarding against her, she scratched her head and smiled embarrassedly. What a coincidence. You're injured. Let me help you bandage it. Don't come over. Her face turned pale and she stumbled back. However, her ankle was twisted and she fell back to the ground. Ah! She gasped and held her ankle with one hand. She broke out in a cold sweat from the pain. Fengjiu shook his head. Look, you're injured, right? I won't do anything to you. Why are you so nervous? She walked over and squatted down in front of her under her wary and panicked gaze. She reached out and was about to pull up her skirt slightly when she saw her shrink back abruptly. What are you trying to do? Fengjiu looked innocent and spread his hands. I'm just looking at your injury. Your skirt is covering it so I can't see it. I have to pull it up. Don't mess around. Thinking that there was no one else around and this young man had a criminal record, her face turned pale. She tried to stand up, but her other leg exerted force and she fell back down. Fengjiu squatted there and watched her toss around. She couldn't help but touch her face and think to herself, do I have a perverted face? Ah! Yi Jing fell down again. She seemed to have twisted the injury on her leg even more. Cold sweat seeped out of her forehead. Seeing this, Fengjiu sighed and shook his head. He walked over and grabbed her foot to take off her shoe and socks. What are you doing? Pervert! Let go of me! Let go! Yi Jing screamed and struggled. She hit the young man who took off her shoe and socks. She was embarrassed, angry, and shocked. How could a woman's foot be seen by a man? This young man was really a pervert. Feng Jiu saw that her ankle was swollen and she kept struggling, so she turned her head and waved to the big black bear that was squatting at the side. "Little Black, come over and help hold her down. Don't let her move around." Roar. The big black bear, which was about 2 to 3 meters tall, let out a low growl. It got up and walked over obediently, step by step. Its 2 clumsy bear paws pressed Yi Jing down on the ground, preventing her from moving. Be gentle, be gentle. She's a beauty. Don't hurt her." She didn't mean anything by her words. She just thought that Yi Jing was a delicate beauty, and Little Black's rough hands and feet might hurt her. Although she reminded him, it didn't mean that in the ears of others. "No, don't. Let me go. Ruofei, Ruofei, save me." She was, after all, a woman. She was pressed down by a big black bear and unable to move. In a place where she couldn't see, she felt her skirt being lifted up by the pervert. She was so shocked that her face turned pale. Her panicked voice was accompanied by a terrified cry for help, hoping that her good sisters could hear her and come to save her. Feng Jiu shook her head. She didn't know that she was such a failure as a person. She originally thought that Yi Jing Ba wasn't a bad person after saving the child, so she wanted to help her. She didn't expect that she would treat her as a flower thief. But... Ruofei? Did Yi Jing come here with a companion? A faint light flashed in her eyes. She raised her eyes slightly and looked at the trees not far away. There was a slightly chaotic aura there just now. At this moment, she looked up and saw a woman hiding behind the tree and looking at her. Chapter 663. The woman in white hiding behind a tree not far away also looked at the scene in front of her in horror. The Saint Beast rank big black bear actually obediently listened to the young man's words and pressed Yi Jing to the ground. She recognized that the young man in green was the pervert who took advantage of Yi Jing on the street that day. She only heard Yi Jing's panicked cries for help and saw her being pressed to the ground. Although she couldn't see everything clearly because of the big black bear, from Yi Jing's panicked cries for help, she could tell that the pervert was about to do that to her. Her palms were sweating, and her heart was beating wildly. If Yi Jing lost her chastity here, then Dada Wu. Suddenly, the big black bear turned around and roared, baring its sharp fangs that made one's hair stand on end. The pressure of a saint beast spread outwards like ripples, scaring Bai Ruofei who was hiding behind the tree. She didn't dare to stay any longer and ran away. Whether Yi Jing was dead or alive, whether she lost her innocence or not, it was none of Bai Ruofei's business. Seeing the woman in white running away, Feng Jiu's lips hooked up. She looked at Yi Jing and said, "Hey, your companion ran away." Yi Jing was startled when she heard these words. "You, what did you say?" At this time, she even forgot to struggle. "It's the woman who was standing next to you on the street that day. She heard you call for help just now, but now she's run away." As she spoke, she checked Yi Jing's ankle. Seeing that it was only a sprain and not a bone injury, she took out some medicine and applied it on her ankle. After rubbing it for a while, the medicine seeped into the skin and soothed the hamstring. Yi Jing's body stiffened, completely not noticing Feng Jiu's rubbing and pressing. Her mind was thinking, did Ruofei really hear her call for help? Then did she go to find someone to save her? She didn't want to think of her friend as someone who didn't save her. She thought that with this pervert and the Saint Beast rank big black bear here, it was normal that she didn't dare to come and save her. She should have gone to find someone to help her. All right. Feng Jiu stood up and stepped back. "Xiao He, let her go." The big black bear howled and obediently let go. It wanted to leave, but it secretly glanced at Feng Jiu and saw that she was smiling at it. It was so scared that it squatted at the side obediently. Yi Jing, who was lying on the ground, came back to her senses when she heard the sound. She glanced at the young man who had already retreated, and her gaze fell on her bandaged ankle. Her face couldn't help but heat up. She was a little embarrassed, a little apologetic, and also a little surprised. It seemed that she had really misunderstood this young man. "I'm sorry." She lowered her head and apologized. "It's okay, who told me to look like a pervert?" She waved her hand and sighed. Hearing this, Yi Jing's face turned red and she lowered her head even more. "I'm sorry. I really didn't mean to misunderstand you. I know. Who asked me to attack your chest the first time we met? It's normal for you to misunderstand." She spoke quickly. Although it was the truth, when she heard this, she didn't feel anything. After all, there was nothing to be embarrassed about between two women. But Yi Jing was different. When she heard this, her entire face turned as red as a cooked shrimp. She quickly raised her head to look at the young man, but saw his indifferent expression. It was obvious that he didn't mean to mention it like that. She couldn't help but bite her lip and lower her head. Chapter 664. How did you provoke Xiaohei? It's been very obedient recently. It doesn't even attack people. Why is it chasing after you? Fengjiu walked over and patted the obedient black bear. Xiaohei. Yi Jing looked at the 2 to 3 meter tall black bear and her eyelids twitched. That was a sacred beast. She really couldn't see how it was small. Yes, Xiaohei. I gave it a name. Don't be fooled by its size. It's just a big fool. Fengjiu smiled and patted the black bear. Seeing it howl and lower its head, he couldn't help but take out a pill and spread it out in his palm. Here, eat it. When the black bear saw the pill in his palm, its eyes lit up. It immediately opened its mouth and leaned forward. This scene made Yi Jing's heart skip a beat. It wouldn't directly bite off the young man's hand, right? However, the scene she was worried about did not happen. Instead, the black bear rolled its tongue and swallowed the pill. At the same time, it stuck out its tongue and wanted to lick the young man's face. Fengjiu smiled and turned his head, saying, "Stop fooling around. Sit down obediently." Yi Jing was surprised. She looked at Fengjiu and saw that he was wearing the Star Cloud Academy uniform. She couldn't help but ask, "You're a student from the medicine department? You just joined this year?" The medicine department and the alchemy department both had green robes. It was said that the alchemy department only recruited one student this year. It couldn't be this young man. Then, he should be from the medicine department. "Yes, I just joined this year." As she spoke, she patted her robes and said, "I'm going back." "What about you?" When she heard this, Yi Jing's hand couldn't help but touch her ankle. She shook her head, "I can't leave." "I know you can't leave. I'm asking if you need me to send you off." "How?" Yi Jing looked at the young man, slightly startled. Hearing her words, Fengjiu smiled and patted the black bear beside him. "Xiaohei, carry her." Roar. The black bear, who had just tasted the sweetness of the fruit, roared and went forward to carry the tiny human. It then looked at Fengjiu. "Let's go." After staying here for half a month, she had collected a lot of fire crystals, which were enough for her to trade for things in the Heaven Tower. Wait. Yi Jing, who was being carried by the big black bear, did not dare to move. She looked at Fengjiu and said, "My friend." Before she could finish, the young man interrupted her with a curl of his lips. "Take care of yourself. Your friend is much shrewder than you." She took a deep breath and moved forward, while the big black bear ran behind Fengjiu. A day later, they left the All-Beast mountain range. Fengjiu looked at Yi Jing, who had fallen asleep in Xiaohei's embrace. He thought for a moment and said, "Xiaohei, be a good person to the end. Send her back to the spiritual academy. The big black bear stared blankly at her, not knowing where the spiritual academy was. However, she rubbed her chin and thought for a while before saying, "Forget it, let's go to my place first. You're too conspicuous. If you go to the spiritual academy, who knows what kind of trouble you'll cause." Thus, she brought the big black bear to her cave dwelling. When she placed the sleeping Yi Jing in her cave dwelling and walked out, she saw that the big black bear was still sitting in front of the cave dwelling. She couldn't help but be surprised. "Xiao Hei, why are you still here? Go back quickly." Roar. The big black bear growled and patted the grass with its clumsy paws. Chapter 665. Roar. The big black bear growled and rubbed itself against her. It was originally quite afraid of her, but it had been fed with pills along the way, so it no longer wanted to go back. Fengjiu was dumbfounded and was stunned for a moment. This isn't very good, right? She already had many beasts, so there was really no need for a big black bear. Moreover, it could not be used as a mount like Lao Bai, nor could it shrink into a meatball like the cloud-swallowing beast, nor could it turn into a chubby baby like the little fire phoenix. She really did not want to keep it. Roar. It suddenly stood up and pounded its chest with its paws, making thumping sounds as if it wanted to tell her that it was very strong. "Stop, stop, stop." She hurriedly stopped it. Although there was no one else here, it was still quite scary to beat it like that. She sighed, thought for a moment, and said, "How about this? If you don't want to go back for now, then help me guard the cave abode here. When you want to go back in the future, you can go back. I won't stop you. Now, be good and guard here. I'm going to." Before she could finish speaking, she heard the sound of hooves and the cloud-swallowing beast's voice. "Master." Fengjiu turned around and saw the cloud-swallowing beast lying on Lao Bai's back. She could not help but be surprised. Why was Lao Bai willing to let the cloud-swallowing beast lie on its back? Moreover, it had only been half a month, but these two beasts had not slimmed down. Instead, they had become fatter. What was going on? What have you done recently? Didn't I tell you to guard the cave abode and not wander around if there's nothing important? Her gaze landed on the cloud-swallowing beast. Compared to Lao Bai, who could only snort, the cloud-swallowing beast could speak. "Master, we didn't do anything good." As the cloud-swallowing beast spoke, it glared fiercely at the big black bear that had shrunk behind its master. Roar. The big black bear immediately lay down and hid behind Fengjiu, trembling. In the 10,000 beast mountain range, it was the king. Here, it saw a divine beast that you didn't do anything good. Then you did something bad. Fengjiu glanced at Tun Yun and felt that there was nothing in the alchemy department that could cause trouble for them. "Master, your brother came to find you. He said he's in the tortoise courtyard." The cloud-swallowing beast hurriedly changed the topic, and then it lay on Senior White's head, not daring to raise its head. Seeing this, Fengjiu raised his eyebrows. He didn't ask what they had done during this period of time. After a few words, he went to the exchange point. He planned to exchange all the fire crystals, go to the heavenly tower to exchange for some good things, and then go to the Xian courtyard to see Guan Xilin. The cloud-devouring beast heaved a sigh of relief when it saw her leave. At this moment, its gaze fell upon the big black bear that had shrunk behind the tree. Fengjiu stood there, looking at the middle-aged deacon in charge of exchanging points. He asked, "Excuse me, can extra fire crystals be exchanged for contribution points through live streaming?" Of course, of course. As long as you can take them out, we'll accept them. The contribution points will be the same as the ones on the mission board," the middle-aged deacon said casually. The middle-aged deacon said casually. He didn't think that such a young man could take out a lot of fire crystals. After all, there was only one fire crystal in a year. Not to mention that the fire crystal was closely guarded by that fire beast. How could it be so easy to get it? Chapter 666. Fengjiu pushed the small mountain of fire crystals forward, a total of 3,980 fire crystals, please. The middle-aged man swallowed his saliva and looked at the young man in front of him with a strange expression. You collected all of these yourself? Yes. She had caught almost all the spirit beasts of the fire attribute in the Thousands Beast Mountain range to collect so many. But thinking about it, it should be enough. There were nearly 2 million contribution points here. She didn't need to do missions for a long time. Moreover, she didn't need to spend money to exchange for treasures. It was quite worth it. Hiss. How could it be? He's wearing green clothes. He's a student from the Pharmaceutical Institute, right? The Pharmaceutical Institute doesn't even have the strength to truss a chicken. How could they collect so many fire crystals? That's right. These fire crystals can only be formed by fire attribute spirit beasts that are above the 6th rank. The lowest grade spirit beast in the All-Beast Mountain range is the Unicorn Flame Beast. This beast is extremely fast, and it's impossible for ordinary people to catch it, let alone dig out its fire crystals. At this time, a great spiritual master student in the back paused and shouted. I know. He must have used medicine on those spirit beasts. I went to the Thousands Beast Mountain range for a mission. These days, I kept meeting spirit beasts of the 6th level and above. Their fire crystals were all dug out by someone. Moreover, those spirit beasts were all skinny and looked like they had been ravaged. He must have done it. Hearing this, Fengjiu in the front turned around and blinked. Looking at the indignant person, he was a little confused. How she got it, what did it have to do with them? Did these people have nothing to do after eating? Too lazy to argue with them, she knocked on the table and said, hurry up and exchange for me. I still have things to do. The middle-aged man glanced at the young man in front of him and then started to count the fire crystals. He wiped his sweat as he counted. He had never seen such a workload and so many fire crystals in such a long time. Exchanging nearly 2 million contribution points in one go, this matter would probably alarm the mentors and deans of the various academies. An hour later, the middle-aged man inserted some contribution points into her jade token and registered everything. Seeing the young man turn around and leave, he couldn't help but feel surprised. He originally thought that he was from the medicine department, but he didn't expect that he was actually from the pill department. The pill department didn't have many students in recent years, so this youth should be the one who just entered this year. Seeing the young man leave, the few students who were exchanging contribution points looked at each other and left as well. When the middle-aged man saw this, he shouted, "Hey, didn't you want to exchange? Why did he leave?" As Fengjiu walked, he wondered what kind of treasures the Heavenly Tower would have. What kind of things could he exchange for with nearly 2 million contribution points? Thinking about it, he was really looking forward to it. However, after walking for a while, the road ahead was blocked by a few people. She looked up and was surprised to see the people standing behind her at the exchange point just now. She asked, "What are you doing?" "Brat, you're from the medicine department, right? The students of the Pharmaceutical Institute should have a lot of good stuff, right?" One of them crossed his arms and smiled at the skinny young man in front of him, completely ignoring the gazes of the surrounding students. Obviously, this wasn't the first time he had done this. Fengjiu was stunned and his eyes widened. This was extortion. Was this an old student bullying a new student? She had long heard that such things would happen in some institutes, but she didn't expect to encounter it. Chapter 667. There were quite a few of them. She was wearing the blue robes of the Profound Academy. At this time, should she obediently hand over the cosmos sack with both hands? Or should she just teach them a lesson? Or perhaps, he could drug them without them noticing. If she encountered someone she couldn't fight back against, how would she react? She frowned and thought hard. After thinking about it, she decided to forget about it. The academy forbade internal fighting. Even if she wanted to fight, she would have to fight on the competition stage. She glanced at them and saw that their chins were slightly raised, their faces as if she didn't dare to do anything. She suddenly revealed a smile. There are many people here, why don't we go over there? Her small finger pointed at a small path not far away. They looked at each other and grinned. They signaled Fengjiu to go first and followed behind her to the small path. Some of the surrounding students saw this and shook their heads. Why did those people target the students from the medicinal academy? They are local tyrants. They have done many things in private. That young man looks like a new student. It's no wonder he doesn't know anything. Should we inform the teachers about this? It has nothing to do with us. Why do we care so much? If those people find out, won't they teach us a lesson? The surrounding students spoke one by one. They only watched from the sidelines and didn't plan to interfere. However, not long after, they saw the young man in green clap his hands and walk out of the small path. When he walked in another direction, they couldn't help but be startled. Why did the young man come out? Where are those people? Yeah, where are those people? One by one, they spoke in astonishment. In the end, they couldn't resist the curiosity in their hearts and walked towards the small path. However, when they saw the scene on the small path, they couldn't help but widen their eyes in astonishment. This seemed to be a little different from what they had imagined. They saw that those people were hanging upside down from the tree beside the two people on the small path. They were only left with a pair of boxers. At this time, they were all unconscious and swaying among the trees like upside-down lanterns. It was very strange. The student swallowed and asked, "Do you think we should go and untie them? Are you full and have nothing to do? We didn't tie them up. What if they blame it on us later? Let's go. These people deserve it. Let them hang there and make a fool of themselves." As the student spoke, they glanced at the unconscious people hanging upside down and quickly left, as if they had never seen such a scene. On the other side, Fengjiu hummed a little tune as he arrived at the Heaven Tower. Only then did he slow down and walk forward. He handed the jade token to the elder of the Heaven Guard Tower and smiled. "Teacher, I'm here to exchange for treasures." The old man took the jade token and glanced at the young man. Exchange for treasures? This was the first time someone had stated their intentions so directly. Every mystic artifact costs a different amount of contribution points. Go in and take a look. If you find something you like and you have enough contribution points, you can exchange for it, the old man said as he registered the information on the jade token. Student of the Alchemy Department, Fengjiu, 16 years old. Thank you, teacher. Chapter 668. Hearing this, the old man raised his eyebrows slightly and looked at the young man in front of him. I heard from the students at the foot of the mountain. I've been here for so many years, but I've only taught a few students. The students at the foot of the mountain don't have the honor of being taught by me. Hearing the old man's words, Fengjiu's smile deepened. Yes, I know that you don't often teach, but when you do, you'll definitely be able to help the students choose the most suitable treasure. Teacher, what about me? Which one in the Heaven Pavilion is most suitable for me? She looked at him excitedly, waiting for him to teach her a thing or two. Seeing this, the old man couldn't help but smile. His expression was serious. Which student who came here didn't respectfully keep a distance from him? Only this brat was so thick-skinned as to come forward. Fine, I'll ask you, what kind of magic tool do you want to choose? I can't fly, can I? I'll choose a flying magic tool. It's not too luxurious or big, but it can be used as a means of transportation. It'll be even better if it can be used as a weapon or has defensive capabilities. She smiled embarrassedly and stared at the old man with shining eyes. Pfft. You have a lot of requirements. He sneered and glanced at Fengjiu. On the second floor's innermost shelf, there's a mahogany box with a rainbow glass feather in it. After dripping blood on it, it can be used as a flying device or as a decoration to hang around your waist. This feather also has defensive capabilities. This weapon was made by a former weapon refiner of the Academy. It can withstand 3 attacks from a golden core cultivator and 1 attack from a nascent soul cultivator. Many students in the Academy have their eyes on this rainbow glass feather, but this feather costs 1,800,000 contribution points. Speaking up to this point, he glanced at the young man. Good things cost a lot of contribution points, but it's not like there aren't any that cost less. Take the second floor of the third row on the first floor, there's also a flying device. It only costs 5,000 contribution points. Thank you, teacher. Fengjiu bowed respectfully to him. 1,800,000 contribution points, that was almost all she had. She was still thinking about how she could get so many contribution points and not have to worry about it for a long time. She didn't expect that it would be gone after a trip to the Heaven Pavilion. Rainbow glass feather. She wanted to see what kind of feather was worth so many contribution points. Following the old man's instructions, she went directly to the innermost shelf on the second floor and took down a mahogany box on the top floor. The moment she opened it, 7 rays of light shot out like a rainbow. That kind of dazzling and beautiful light made her fall in love with it at first sight. No woman could resist beautiful things. This feather was simply too beautiful. It was only the length of a palm and looked like an ordinary feather. What was different was that it was flowing with 7-colored light. Layers of flowing light streaked across the feather like water ripples, one layer after another. It was dazzling and beautiful. This is it. She picked up the mahogany box and walked out. She came to the old man and placed the box in front of him. Teacher, I'll exchange it for this. The old man glanced at the mahogany box and asked, do you have that many contribution points? There is. I just came back from a mission to exchange for it. She grinned and handed the jade tablet over again. Chapter 669. So much? Didn't your identity jade token show that you just entered the academy? He couldn't help but ask, glaring at the youth. Or do you have someone backing you up? Fengjiu was stunned. She scratched her head awkwardly and said innocently, I don't have anyone backing me up. I earned this myself. Really, I just exchanged it with the contribution points I earned from collecting fire crystals at the All-Beast Mountain range. Was she so untrustworthy? She was telling the truth, but why didn't anyone believe her? It would have been better if she hadn't said that she went to the All-Beast Mountain range to collect fire crystals. The old man didn't believe her even more. Even though he was suspicious, the old man didn't say anything. He helped Fengjiu exchange for the rainbow glazed feather. After all, he had enough contribution points, so there was no reason not to exchange it for him. He was only thinking that he should get someone to investigate this young man's background when he got back. Could he be a relative of the dean? Did the dean secretly give him contribution points? But he rejected the idea as soon as it appeared. Impossible, the dean wasn't that kind of person. After the exchange, Fengjiu dripped blood on the feather to make it recognize her as its owner. She then took out a red ribbon and tied it around her waist. Looking at the dazzling rainbow glazed feather, she couldn't help but praise, it's so beautiful. Thank you for your guidance. I'm leaving now. I'll come again next time. She waved her hand and walked towards the Xian courtyard under the old man's stare. Along the way, the students who met her all looked at the feather on her waist. They were all surprised. The rainbow glazed feather was one of the 3 treasures that students wanted to exchange for the most in the Academy's Sky Tower. That rainbow-glazed feather was refined by a revered weapon refiner of the Academy. The feather was almost weightless, but the rainbow-like rainbow light flowed across the feather like water ripples. It was extremely beautiful. What people wanted the most was that in addition to being an extremely fast-flying magic tool, it could also withstand 3 attacks from a golden core cultivator and a heavy blow from a nascent soul cultivator. This was a life-saving magic tool. As far as they knew, the top 10 prodigies of the Academy had their eyes on the 3 treasures in the Heaven Pavilion. However, it was not easy to earn contribution points, especially when the exchange rate for these 3 treasures was so high. Ordinary students would not be able to exchange for them even if they spent tens of years. He hadn't expected that he would see it on the waist of a green-robed student from the Pharmaceutical Institute. This news quickly spread throughout the Academy like the wind. Do you understand? One of the 3 treasures of the Heavenly Pavilion, the rainbow-glazed feather, was exchanged by a green-robed student. Have you heard? The 7-colored glazed feather was exchanged for by a student from the First Medicine Department. It is said that the student just joined this year. I've heard about it. Someone guessed that this student in green has a backer. That's true. Otherwise, how could he have been able to exchange for one of the 3 treasures, the rainbow-glazed feather? The Academy's instructors don't have that much authority over contribution points. It's very likely that this green-clothed student is a descendant of the dean or the vice-dean's family. That's impossible. I've heard that the dean's family isn't even here, let alone a disciple of a family. Then it must be the vice-dean's. Otherwise, how could that student have earned 1.8 million contribution points for that feather? I don't know about that. However, I've heard that the top 10 prodigies of our Academy have already gone out to look for that green-clothed youth. Chapter 670. Climbing up the main peak of the profound Academy, he looked at the groups of students. Some were gesticulating under the trees, discussing martial arts. Some were sitting on the grass, chatting with smiles on their faces. Some were hanging upside down from the trees, their heads facing downwards, their eyes closed, and some AI. They're all Nebula Academy students. The Alchemy Academy can't compare to the Xian Academy at all. She sighed. There were so many people on the main peak of the Xian Academy that she couldn't count them all. The atmosphere was lively and harmonious. It was a strong contrast to the desolate atmosphere of her Alchemy Academy. She walked forward with a harmless smile on her handsome face. She politely cupped her hands and asked a student of the Xian Academy, "May I ask?" As soon as she said that, before she even got close to that student, she saw that student pointing at her and crying out in alarm. "Look! The green-robed youth is here. He actually came to our Xian Academy." Almost as soon as she said this, everyone's eyes turned to her. Even the person on the tree with his eyes closed jumped up and opened his eyes to stare at her. What is this?" she asked in confusion. Looking at the students surrounding her, she couldn't help but take a step back. She saw that even the road behind her was surrounded by people, all of them staring at her. Then, their eyes fell on the rainbow glass feather at her waist. What are you doing?" "I exchanged for this." She instinctively covered the feather at her waist and stared at the crowd vigilantly. "Kid, where did you come from? You exchanged for the rainbow glass feather in less than a month after entering the Academy? Where did you come from?" Fengjiu was stunned and said innocently, "I don't have any background. I earned this myself." In all honesty, it was rare for her to obediently do missions to earn contribution points. Why was everyone asking her where she came from? Are you joking? You earned it yourself. The top 10 geniuses of the Rainbow Glass Feather Academy are all watching. They can't even earn 1.8 million contribution points to exchange for it. You, a rookie who just entered the academy, earned it in less than a month. Would anyone believe me? Fengjiu's mouth twitched. Rookie? She was called a rookie again. Although she was a rookie, she really wasn't a rookie, okay? I earned this in the first place. I even dripped my blood on this feather to make it recognize me as its owner. I can't do anything if you don't believe me. However, what does it have to do with me whether you believe me or not? Did these people think it was easy for her to change a feather? This feather had cost her 1,800,000 contribution points. She felt wronged. However, when everyone heard this, they were enraged. They all glared angrily at the innocent and aggrieved youth in front of them. How is it not related? Even we couldn't exchange for it, but you, a new student of the pharmaceutical department, managed to exchange for it. If you didn't get in through the back door, then what is? That's right. A treasure that even the top 10 prodigies of the academy couldn't exchange for was given to a rookie like you. How could it not be related to us? Senior Zhou said that she wanted to exchange for this rainbow-glazed feather ever since she entered the academy. She worked so hard to earn contribution points for this feather. How sad do you think she would be if she knew that the feather she liked was taken by a rookie? Chapter 671. However, just as she was about to step back, she was blocked by the students behind her. Trying to leave? Since you're here, don't even think about leaving without explaining yourself. One of the students snorted coldly, crossing his arms as he stared coldly at the youth in green. That's right, don't leave without explaining yourself. Another student said, blocking Fengzhou's path of retreat. Seeing this, Fengzhou blinked in astonishment and stared at them. What are you guys trying to do? Are you bullying me? Let me tell you, don't do anything rash. Hee, you dare to wear that rainbow glass feather in public, and you're still afraid of people messing around? One of the students stared at Fengzhou and said, the rainbow glass feather is one of the 3 treasures of the heavenly pavilion. The news of it being exchanged spread like wildfire. Not only us, but the people from the spiritual academy are also looking for you. Moreover, the 10 prodigies of the academy would also like to see what abilities a new student like you has to be able to exchange for this rainbow glass feather. Hearing this, Fengzhou glared at them angrily, feeling wronged and angry. You guys are too much of a bully. This is obviously a magic weapon that I earned. Besides, when did I show it off? This feather can be used as a waist accessory. If I don't wear it, where should I wear it? Hee, earned it yourself. Do you believe it? One of the students laughed loudly and looked at the surrounding students. I don't believe you. The surrounding students replied with a smile, raising their heads and laughing loudly. You guys are too much of a bully. Too much of a bully. She said angrily, glaring at them and warning them, you guys, don't go too far. If you really piss me off, what will you do? One of the students laughed and asked. A faint light flashed in her eyes, and she suddenly laughed. I will hit people. Ha, hit people. You. Yes, I will really hit people. She said with a serious face. The people from the medicinal department told us that she will hit people. Ha, do you think that's funny? You will hit people. Why don't you try? I'd like to see how you will hit people, ha. However, Fengzhou shook his head and sighed. But that won't do. Didn't the academy forbid private fights? How could I hit you? What if the tutor finds trouble with me later? Just let me go. Otherwise, if you really piss me off, I will really beat you up. That's right. Why don't you try and fight? Ha, kid, are you sure you don't know where this place is? This is the Profound Academy. You want to fight with the people of the Profound Academy? Heh, you've got guts. That's right. I've been in the Xian Academy for so many years, but I've never seen such an interesting thing. A student from the Medicine Academy is beating someone up in our Xian Academy? Ha, I really want to know how this kid fights. Brat, come. Show us a punch. Do you know how to punch? Do you need me to teach you? The student standing in front of Fengjiu said with a mocking smile, but before he could finish speaking, he saw a fist suddenly swing over. The sudden punch caught the student off guard, and with a bang, his eyes hurt. At the same time, his vision went black and he fell straight to the ground. Hiss. You actually dare to hit me. Fuck. Brat, you don't want to live anymore. Chapter 672. Everyone looked at the Xian Academy student who had been knocked unconscious by the youth's punch. They all angrily cursed and pointed at the innocent-looking youth. They felt that this person was too despicable. He actually attacked when he said he would. Taking advantage of someone's unpreparedness, he was too shameless. How dare he come to our Xian courtyard and behave so atrociously? Brothers, beat him up. If we don't teach him a lesson, he won't know how powerful our Xian courtyard is. Those students cursed angrily, one by one, they waved their fists at the innocent-looking green-clothed youth. Everyone surrounded him, scaring Fengjiu into crying out in alarm. Ah! Don't mess around. Her figure flashed and her feet moved, instantly passing by them. Just as she was about to run down the Xian courtyard, she saw a man and a woman riding a white crane towards her. Ah! It's Senior Zhou and Senior Geng. It's true, they're really here. This youth is going to be miserable. That's right. The new student exchanged for one of the 3 treasures of the heavenly pavilion, the rainbow-glazed feather. They must be here to see who exactly this youth is. A mere new student is able to alarm the 10 heavenly prides of our Xian courtyard. His face is quite big. Ha ha ha, let's wait and see how he's dealt with. Senior Zhou and Senior Geng are from the Xian courtyard. In addition, they also have a huge force behind them. He even dares to snatch something that they want. This youth's skin is really tight. As the crowd spoke, the 2 people riding the white cranes did not dismount. Instead, they hovered in the air and looked down at the azure-robed young man. When they saw the colorful rainbow glass feather at the young man's waist, a glint flashed through their eyes. The man riding the white crane stared sharply at Fengjiu below and asked, "How should I address you, junior brother?" Fengjiu glanced at the 2 people on the white crane and didn't intend to speak. Instead, he looked around and pushed aside the people blocking his way to leave. What a joke. Did she have to answer just because he asked? Was there anyone who asked someone with such a condescending attitude? She couldn't be bothered with him. When everyone saw that the youth in green only glanced at Senior Geng and was about to leave, they all sucked in a breath of cold air. Wasn't this green-robed youth a little too arrogant? How dare he ignore Senior Geng? When the white-clothed man on the white crane saw this, his eyes turned cold. He stared at the youth and asked again, "Junior, how should I address you?" The man's voice was cold and carried with it a wave of spiritual pressure. It was the pressure of a great spiritual master. At this moment, it attacked Fengjiu. The surrounding students of the Profound Academy could all feel the pressure of a great spirit master spreading through the air. However, the green-clothed youth acted as if nothing had happened. He didn't even raise his head as he continued walking, not affected in the slightest. "Hey! Kid, didn't you hear what Senior Geng asked you? Brat, do you know the rules?" The surrounding students of the Xian Academy shouted and once again surrounded Fengjiu, blocking his path. Seeing this, Fengjiu sighed and looked at them. "What are you doing? We're all students of the same academy, why are you making things difficult for me? I don't even want to bicker with you guys anymore, but you guys still don't stop. Don't you know that saints also have fire?" Chapter 673. Oh. You can get angry. Ha ha ha, why don't you get angry? Fengjiu glanced at them and didn't say a word. No one saw her hand move under her sleeve. She raised her eyes and looked at the leaves that were gently swaying in the wind. She slowly raised her hand and brushed her hair. After a few breaths, she glanced at the students and continued walking. Thinking that she wouldn't be able to see her brother today, she decided to come again next time. Well, she could ask her brother to find her. After all, once the commotion here spread, he would know that she was here. Kid, who allowed you to dot before he could say the word go? The legs of the student who was about to step forward to grab the green-clothed youth gave way and he fell forward to the ground due to inertia. Ah! Hiss! What's going on? Cries of surprise rang out one after another. The students at the lower end of the wind fell to the ground one by one, unable to even stand up. As for those at the upper end of the wind, they were shocked by the scene in front of them. They all stared at Phone 9 with wide eyes. It's you. It's you, right? You're a student of the medicine department. You must have used despicable methods. The students who were upwind were cursing when they saw the youth in green raise his hand and a gust of wind blew in their faces. They instinctively inhaled, but by the time they reacted, it was too late. They only felt the wind enter their bodies and in the next moment, their legs went soft and they fell to the ground. Fengjiu looked at the students who were lying on the ground and said helplessly, I told you not to block the way, but you didn't listen. What should I do with you? The students glared at the helpless youth in green, feeling that he was despicable and shameless. If they fought, they could crush him with a single finger. Fengjiu looked at them and seemed to have guessed what they were thinking. He revealed a meaningful smile and said, You should be glad that I used medicine. She flicked her sleeves and walked forward. However, a white figure floated down and stopped in front of her. Junior brother, my name is Zhou Xian, a student of the Spiritual Academy. I would like to ask if you are willing to sell the rainbow glazed feather on your waist. I can buy it from you at a high price. Zhou Xian, who was wearing the white uniform of the Spiritual Academy, looked at the green-clothed youth before her with a gentle gaze. Her voice was gentle and sweet, so gentle that it brushed past the hearts of the males, causing them to feel a burst of numbness in their hearts. They couldn't help but wish that they had the rainbow glass feather so that they could offer it to her with both hands. Fengjiu sized up the white-clothed girl in front of him. She was only 16 or 17 years old. Her face revealed a gentle beauty, and her aura was gentle. Unfortunately, the arrogance between her brows ruined her beauty, making her look much less attractive. Compared to Yi Jing's beauty, this girl called Zhou Xian paled in comparison. Not only was Yi Jing one of the top 10 prodigies, but she was also publicly acknowledged as the #1 beauty in the academy. Her limelight was naturally not something an ordinary person could compare to. Seeing the gaze of the green-clothed youth sizing her up, Zhou Xian suppressed her disgust and maintained a gentle smile. Her gentle gaze contained a bit of shyness as she looked at the youth in front of her. Previously, she had only taken a rough glance. Now that she looked at him up close, she found that this youth was very handsome. Chapter 674. Perhaps it was because the youth's appearance was too handsome, or perhaps it was because the light in his eyes was deep and mysterious, but Zhou Xian's initial disgust turned into a slight discomfort. Unexpectedly, her face gradually flushed red, and her expression carried the shyness and charm of a girl. Under the youth's gaze, her beautiful eyes shyly drooped, and a trace of nervousness that shouldn't have appeared in her heart. Fengjiu didn't pay attention to the change in her expression. She was only comparing this Zhou Xian to Yi Jing. She really didn't have any playful thoughts. And, what's more, she was a woman. Even if she admired a beauty, it was only admiration. She couldn't have any other thoughts. Thus, she revealed a smile and said apologetically, I'm really sorry. I also like this feather, so I don't plan on selling it. Zhou Xian looked at the charming smile on the youth's handsome face and unconsciously became lost in it. She stared blankly and softly murmured, Oh, it's fine. I was just asking. In the air, when Senior Geng saw Zhou Xian's infatuated eyes looking at the youth, a trace of coldness unconsciously flashed through his eyes. His eyes darkened, and when his gaze fell on Fengjiu, a trace of killing intent flashed through his eyes. It was undeniable that this cyan-clothed youth's appearance was very outstanding. His handsome face was extremely rare in the entire academy. Before, when he didn't reveal a smile, his appearance was different. It was no wonder that Junior Zhou was infatuated with him. This youth, as long as he was willing, had the qualifications to make women infatuated with him. The students of the Xian Academy who were lying on the ground after being drugged were all dumbfounded. Most of the students in the Xian Academy were men, and at this time, almost all of them were male students. Among them, there were many who adored the beautiful Zhou Xian in front of them. But when they saw that the girl they adored couldn't even resist the youth's smile and was lost in it, they were stunned and angry. Too hateful. Not only did he come to their profound academy to flaunt his strength, he even used drugs to make them weak and unable to stand up. But the most hateful thing was that this youth dared to seduce Senior Zhou in front of so many of them. He simply treated them as if they didn't exist. This was really going too far. "All right then, I'll leave first," Fengjiu said with a smile. She glanced at Zhou Xian, who was staring blankly at her, before walking away. This time, no one stopped him, and no one tried to stop him. Everyone watched as the green-robed youth swaggered away. On the other hand, dozens of students were lying on the ground in front of the Xian Academy. Along the way, the academy disciples they met all stared at her, as well as the rainbow-glazed feather at her waist. Their stares made her hair stand on end, and she finally couldn't take it anymore and removed the feather from her waist. Seriously, it's as if they haven't seen the world. Isn't it just a feather? Wasn't it just a magic treasure? All of them are staring at me like hungry wolves staring at meat. Their drooling looks are really unbearable. She muttered to herself and walked along a small path. When she reached a more remote place, she tossed the feather into the air. Her eyes lit up when she saw the feather glowing brightly in front of her. She leaped onto the feather and sat on it. Only then did she head towards her cave. Chapter 675. When she returned to the cave abode, she saw Little Black obediently guarding outside. Old White was also wandering around outside the cave abode. Little Tun Yun, on the other hand, was lying lazily on the grass without even lifting its head. Is Yi Jing still not awake? She was puzzled. She walked past the three beasts and entered the cave abode. Only then did she see Yi Jing, who was already awake, sitting by the stone table. "You're awake. Why aren't you leaving since you're awake?" She did not ask that question. Yi Jing turned around and saw the rainbow-glazed feather hanging from the youth's waist. She could not help but be surprised. "Why do you have this?" Hearing that, Fengjiu smiled and sat down by the table. He took the feather and played with it in his hand. "Of course I exchanged it with the contribution points I earned." Hearing that, Yi Jing was stunned. She thought about how even the holy beast-level black bear listened to him obediently. She could not help but move her lips, but did not ask. Although she felt that it was a little unbelievable. However, when she followed the youth out, the various beasts in the 10,000 Beast Mountain range either avoided or ran away when they saw him. She could not explain that strange phenomenon. This youth clearly did not look strong. Previously, she had chased him all over the streets, but he seemed to have other ways to deal with beasts. Many students are watching this rainbow-glazed feather. "You have to be careful in case they find trouble with you," she reminded softly. "Hee, I know," she replied with a smile. She did not tell him that she was almost unable to return just now because she was surrounded by people. Looking at this carefree young man, she revealed a gentle smile. "Thank you." Seeing the youth wave his hand nonchalantly, she asked softly, "You're the new student in the Pill Institution this year, right?" "Yes," Fengjiu replied. He took out 2 fruits from his sleeve and threw one to her. Yi Jing caught it and asked, I still don't know your name. Can you tell me? Fengjiu. I'm Yi Jing. She smiled and said, you know me. Yes, I know. One of the top 10 prodigies in the institution, and the number 1 beauty in the institution, she said with a smile. She looked at her and nodded. You are indeed worthy of the title of number 1 beauty. Hearing this, Yi Jing could not help but laugh and said, what number 1 beauty? It's just a joke made by the students of the academy. Seeing this, Fengjiu rolled his eyes and stared at her for a long time. He smiled and asked, let me ask you something. Seeing the youth staring at her like that, Yi Jing was a little embarrassed and asked, what's the matter? This young man was really handsome, but he gave people a very strange feeling. He was clearly looking at her, but his eyes didn't have the desire and infatuation that some people had. Instead, there was only magnanimous admiration, which made her look at him in a new light. Are you engaged? Is there anyone you like? Ah. Yi Jing didn't expect the young man to ask such a question. She was stunned for a moment and her face turned slightly red. If she didn't see that there was no other meaning in the young man's eyes, she would have thought that he was interested in her. I'm not engaged yet, and I don't have anyone I like. After saying this, she felt embarrassed and asked, why are you asking this? Hee, this is good. Let me tell you. Chapter 676. When Yi Jing heard this, she opened her mouth wide in shock. She looked at the smiling young man who was acting as a matchmaker and was speechless for a long time. How about it? Actually, you don't have to agree right away. Just meet him and see if he fits your eyes. If he's not bad, you can just take it one step further. Let me tell you, I'm introducing my brother to you because I want to meet you. Other women don't even have this chance. Hearing this, Yi Jing didn't know whether to laugh or cry. This young man had once again refreshed her impression of him. Really? How should she put it? It was strange and interesting. It's getting late, I have to go back. She stood up with a smile and brushed her clothes as she looked at the young man. Can you walk on your feet? Do you need me to send you off? Fengjiu also stood up and asked. She smiled and shook her head, no need. Before you came back, I blew the whistle to call the white crane over. It should be here soon. Thus, Fengjiu only sent her out of the cave and waited outside with her. He said, I'm serious. Think about it again. When there's a chance next time, I'll introduce him to you. Yi Jing only smiled and didn't say anything. When she saw that the big black bear was still sitting there, she couldn't help but ask, isn't it going back? Why is it still here? It's relying on me. Fengjiu helplessly shrugged. Seeing this, Yi Jing was slightly stunned and then laughed softly. When she saw the white crane flying in the sky and circling for a while before stopping in front of her, she looked at the young man beside her and said, Fengjiu, it's nice to meet you. I'll come again next time. Hearing this, Fengjiu's smile deepened, it's nice to meet you. You're welcome to come again when you're free. He smiled and watched her leave on the white crane, disappearing over the other side of the mountain. At the same time, the students of the Profound Academy brought people to the medicine department after they recovered. They planned to settle the score with the young man in green. Who knew that after asking the entire medicine department, they couldn't find him? Ah! I heard that there's a new student in the medicine department this year. Could that brat be from the medicine department? Let's go. Let's go take a look. I don't believe we can't take care of him. Thus, the large group of people headed toward the alchemy department. On the other side, the old man from the Heaven Pavilion had found the dean and the vice dean and told them about Fengjiu. He wanted to see their reactions. After all, it wasn't normal for a new student to be able to take out 1.8 million contribution points to exchange for treasures. Who would have thought that the two of them, who hadn't paid much attention to the old man's words, would be stunned for a moment. The Vice Academy head even stood up in shock. Who are you talking about? Fengjiu. Is it really Fengjiu? Yes, his name is Fengjiu. He's 16 years old and looks quite handsome. The old man nodded and glanced at the excited vice president. Is this young man a relative of the vice president? Ha ha ha, what are you talking about? If this old man had such a relative, it would be great. Let me tell you, this young man, I've been looking for him for a long time. I didn't think that he would really enter our College of Stars and Clouds. Even more so, I didn't think that he would run to the alchemy department. This brat, could it be that he knows alchemy? Thinking of this possibility, the vice president's heart was filled with excitement. Seeing this, the old man was puzzled and asked, "Why are you so excited? Isn't it just a young man?" Chapter 677. The vice president laughed heartily. Just as he was about to go to the alchemy department to take a look, a mentor hurried in. "Dean, it's not good. The students of the Profound Academy are all saying that they're going to settle accounts with someone. Nearly 100 of them are running to the alchemy department." When they heard this, they were stunned. The dean asked, "What's going on?" "They're running to the alchemy department to settle accounts?" "That's right. One of the 3 treasures of the heavenly court, the rainbow glass feather, was exchanged by a young man in green. The rainbow glass feather is a treasure that all the top 10 geniuses of the academy are eyeing, but now it's in the hands of a new student. Not to mention that they didn't do anything, the people of the academy were all agitated when they saw the feather on the young man's waist." The instructor wiped his sweat and said, "It's just that I don't know what happened to this young man, but he ran to the Xian Academy. Those Xian Academy disciples stopped him and asked him if he had a backer or something like that. Later on, they formed a shield and didn't make a move. It was just that the students of the Xian Academy were all lying on the ground." When the elder of the heavenly court heard this, his mouth moved, but he couldn't say anything for a long time. After the people of the Profound Academy recovered, they went to the alchemy department. The alchemy department said there was no such person, so they ran to the alchemy department. There are over 100 of them. I couldn't stop them. I was afraid something would happen, so I came to ask how we should deal with this matter. Nonsense! The vice president shouted. He knew that although the young man was strong and talented, he was humble and kind. Why would he wear the rainbow glass feather and show it off everywhere? He had probably gone to the Xian courtyard to look for his elder brother, Guan Shilin. However, these disciples of the Xian courtyard were too much. With this young man's strength and cultivation, how could he not earn nearly 2 million contribution points after entering the courtyard? Cough. Although this was a bit heaven-defying, it shouldn't be difficult for such a talented young man, right? But the people of the Profound Academy were too much. They couldn't exchange for it, but they couldn't let others exchange for it. Thinking of this, the vice president shouted angrily, "You're all going against the heavens. Are there any rules?" He turned to speak to the dean, then led the mentor of the Profound Academy to the alchemy department. The elder of the heavenly court saw the vice president fling his sleeve angrily and couldn't help but ask the dean, "Is that young man really not related to him?" The dean smiled, he stroked his beard, "Hee, come, have a seat. Let me tell you about this." Some of the students of the Xian Academy had flying transports, while some didn't. Therefore, some carried those who didn't. In less than half an incense stick's worth of time, the hundreds of people arrived at the peak of the Alchemy Academy. They looked around and learned from Deacon Sun about Fengjiu's cave abode, on. The S2 inn of residence, on. It, out. Come out now. Fengjiu heard the commotion outside. He was slightly startled. Then he got up and put on his clothes. Outside, the big black bear that had gone to the nearby forest to look for food with Lao Bai heard the commotion in the cave and rushed back. When it saw that there were quite a few people gathered there, it immediately let out a furious roar and pounced towards those people. Roar! Chapter 678. Bang! The big black bear landed heavily on the ground and stood guard in front of the cave. It bared its sharp teeth and stared at the students who were quickly retreating. Its holy beast aura surged out along with its low roar, causing the students who were quickly retreating to turn pale in fright. Heavens! Why is there a holy beast level big black bear here? The students who were originally surrounding the cave turned pale and did not dare to step forward. With their cultivation, they could not deal with a holy beast at all. However, this holy beast should be in the depths of the All-Beast mountain range. Why would it come here? Roar! The big black bear roared angrily, but it did not pounce forward because Fengjiu had told it that it could not harm the people in the academy. Therefore, it only wanted to scare them. Not far away, Lao Bai slowly trotted over on its horse's hooves. It raised its head and glanced at the surrounding students. 2 streams of breath came out of its nostrils. When it saw that there was not even a beauty among them, it shook its ponytail in boredom and found a place to lie down. Damn! What kind of strange horse is that? Why is there such a thing in the academy? Look! There's a little pet at the entrance of the cave. A student exclaimed and pointed at little Tun Yun who was walking out of the cave with its short legs and lying at the entrance. The furry little Tun Yun looked harmless. No one could tell that it was a divine beast. Is this really where that kid from the alchemy institution lives? Not a place to raise beasts. At this moment, Fengjiu, who was dressed in green, walked out with the rainbow glass feather at his waist. He glanced at the hundreds of people and smiled. What are you doing? Kid, you still dare to smile. One of them saw Fengjiu and glared at him. You came to our Xian institution to show off your strength. Today, we will definitely not let you off. That's right. Kid, come out. We want to challenge you. That's right. We'll definitely let you know how powerful we are. Hearing this, Fengjiu chuckled. He crossed his arms and leaned against the cave. Forget it. You're really too weak. I'm a little embarrassed to fight you. Hurry up and go back. Otherwise, I won't be able to hold my little black back if he loses his temper. Roar! As if confirming Fengjiu's words, the big black bear growled after she finished speaking. When the disciples of the mysterious academy who were about to step forward saw this, they immediately took a step back. Some were angry, some were unwilling, and some were staring at the young man in green with hatred. All of you, attack! We don't believe that we can't beat this brat. A student shouted loudly and took the lead to rush forward. When the others saw this, they all clenched their fists and rushed forward. Half of them surrounded the big black bear, while the other half broke through the cave's barrier. Looking at the chaotic scene outside, Fengjiu was really shocked. He hurriedly shouted, "Do you really want to die? My family's little black is a saint beast. Just one palm from him is enough to make you suffer." Humph. I want to beat you up. Who cares if it's a saint beast? If we came here for nothing, that would be embarrassing. Yes. I want to beat you up. Hearing this, Fengjiu widened his eyes. You're too much of a bully. How could there be hundreds of people besieging her? These people were too much. Did they really think she was easy to bully? Good. You forced me, so don't blame me. Chapter 679. All of you, stay your hand. A thunderous roar came from the sky, and a wave of pressure spread out in all directions, causing the people below to stagger back a few steps. Their blood and chi were boiling in their bodies, as if they were about to rush up to their throats. They looked up at the sky in shock, and with one look, they immediately withered. It's the Vice Academy head. What's the Vice Academy head doing here? Even the Vice Academy head has been alerted. Fengjiu looked up to see the old man's robes fluttering as he flew through the air with an instructor. In the blink of an eye, they landed in front of the cave. When she saw the old man coming towards her, she couldn't help but smile and take a step back. Who took the lead to cause trouble here? The Vice Academy head glared at the students who had lowered their heads. Do you want to be expelled? Hurry up and get out of here. When the students heard the word expelled, they were so frightened their palms began to sweat. Not daring to linger, they hurriedly left. Not a single one of them remained. When he saw this, the instructor who came with the Vice Academy head shook his head and sighed softly. Only then did he look at the azure-clothed youth standing in the cave abode. Fengjiu, why aren't you opening the formation and letting me in? The Vice Academy head narrowed his eyes at Fengjiu. He was delighted to see the young man again. He'd personally witnessed Tang Wulin's strength and talent. He was confident that if it were him, Star Cloud Academy would stand out among the other academies in the Triennial Inter-Academy competition. Fengjiu scratched his head and smiled awkwardly. He opened the formation and invited the old man in. Vice Academy head Guan, long time no see. This old man has been waiting for you for a long time. I thought you were fine. I didn't expect you to come to the pill department. He walked in with a smile and looked around the cave. Then he looked at Fengjiu. You also know how to refine pills? I'm learning. Old man Guan sat down at the stone table and looked at Fengjiu. Well, I heard that you went to the Xian courtyard. You must have gone to find your brother. Hearing this, Fengjiu was astonished. Could it be that my brother directly used the token to enter the academy? That was not possible, right? She still knew his character. Even if he could get in through the back door, with his character, he would still want to use his own strength. That's not the case. It's like this. Old Guan smiled and told Fengjiu about Guan Shilin entering the academy. In the end, he said, since he is your sworn brother, I wanted to take care of him and let him go to the Xian Tower. That's why he is not in the Xian courtyard right now. Hearing this, she came to a realization. Oh, so that's how it is. I was wondering why he didn't come out when I went to the profound courtyard and caused such a big commotion. You've been buried in the alchemy department. I want to transfer you to the spiritual department. What do you think? No. How can that be? Before Fengjiu could say anything, two voices came from outside. The two of them turned around and saw the two alchemists who had helped Fengjiu with the examination that day rush in. Vice Academy head, Fengjiu was recruited by the two of us. He is the only student in the alchemy department. We have high hopes for him. How can you transfer him to the spiritual department? His talent in alchemy will be buried if he goes to the spiritual department. Absolutely not. You're tuning into the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.